Some even intermingled with beasts that never inhabited these lands, the eternal known lands, where their oceans are stained with ancestral blood.
It's literally called Blood Falls in Antarctica. I'm not making this up. There, you guys can see it. Plain as day. Blood Falls 2006.
So how come the dragons don't fly over the ice wall into Middle Earth where we live?
To all you guys that seen Attack on Titan, what if I told you it was based on a true story? Why would they have UFOs in this moon map though, on the outer edge? You would need these type of devices like they're saying that would have to fly by air and be submersible to get to these different places. You better lock in and buckle up, bucko! Cause you're in for another creepy and scary TikTok reaction video. If you haven't already, please slap that like button. And remember, keep your head on a straight swivel on these creepy, disturbing, shocking, weird, bizarre videos that might keep you up all night.
My son's be not afraid.
Hyper mode, activate!
JetskiChucK, pull back now.
Going into the outer lands. We have to figure this out.
You must stop JetskiChucK.
No, there's no turning back. We have to do this. North Pole dimensions are open.
10,
Third boosters are
9,
set to maximum
8,
capacity.
7,
Activate quantum mode.
5, 4, 3, 2,
Hey,
1.
Welcome to Dark Waters 9. Activate submersible.
Crater. So they escaped to the Pillars of Hercules, and then in the 60s, these guys, they started mapping everything where they told us that they're actually exploring space, dark space with the spinning balls, when they were actually sending the spaceships and everything all through the exit. That's why the spaceships, when they go up, they go horizontally after they reach a certain height, and then they explore everything. So the Russians in red and the Americans in blue and green, and then you have the Apollo missions, which are the manned missions. So these spots here are the spots which they got human beings sent there in their suits, obviously, because there's lots of water and there's different air and conditions. The same with the Atlanteans, the ancient aliens, which are the Atlanteans and stuff. They came into suits as well because the biodiversity in the environment in this crater was different there in their crater. Just so you notice, there's so many big craters on the map, so you can actually tell that the crater where we live, so this is Gallus M, or the Line crater, they're so tiny and small, right? So you can only imagine how many extraterrestrials and aliens and ancient aliens you have. And this is only the known map, right? Because you can see here, the Americans have reached with the Lunar Prospector until here, and then the Americans also with the Lunar Orbiter here, and then with the Ranger 4 here. So that's the extremes that they managed to get to. So that's what they mapped so far. And of course, imagine all of the in a crater.
That will make sense why we always see those space shuttles get shot up into the air and then they have that giant curve to them. They're going to the outer lands, y'all, and so are we.
So how come the dragons don't fly over the ice wall into Middle Earth where we live? So I asked the guy who said he's flown to New Tared multiple times this exact question, and what he told me is the dragons don't like to live over on Earth anymore because we used to kill a bunch of them, and they especially don't want to come back now because of the 4G and 5G radiation, which apparently is the same reason why all the other people around on these other continents don't want to come to Earth, because there's so much radiation, not only from the phone service, but also from electrical outlets, I guess. And what else he told me is that the dragons, they live on these other continents because there's so much space and not many people actually live there. And it is interesting how in every single culture, dragons seem to be a part of it, and they seem to be in their mythology. Maybe they were just mistaken after seeing dinosaur bones, or maybe they actually did see dragons flying in their skies 1,000 years ago. But what do you guys think? Is this guy's story fact, or is it fiction?
We are the real extraterrestrials. Terrestrial means what? Earth dweller, earth bound. Then there's extraterrestrial, which means beyond the earth. That's what extraterrestrials mean. Well, our history, if you study ancient Egypt, ancient Hebrew, and we're not talking about fundamental religion from 2,000 years on up. Real ancient scripture, real ancient teaching system, metaphysical systems, or what you call mystery systems, tell you that we once were gods in control of the universe, and then we fell on this plateau. And then while on this plateau, we made the best of it. And the mere fact that the best caved in and fell down was because we inherited it. We got rid of that, or we gave it up so we could go into hibernation or go into the cocoon stage so we can have a metamorphosis as the butterfly, which means we would be reborn into a god greater than the god that we fell from, even in the heavens when we was up there doing our thing, which is higher than this.
If you've ever wondered where Jupiter is, apparently this is where it is, beyond the third ring of the ice wall, right next to Asgard, and it exists as one of the outer worlds, right next to all of the other planets in the solar system. Now, this is a map that I created, and it was based off of descriptions and drawings that I got from these people who messaged me on Telegram and other places, telling me that they have been to some of these lands, or they escaped because there was some kind of war going on. And I've gotten so many messages from people who say that I need to stop talking about what I'm talking about because they are at risk and Asgard is attacking everybody. So I don't know what's up with that, why so many people are saying that, but I'm not saying that I believe these people, but I am also not saying that it is immediately false because there's so much in this world that we don't even know, and I'm just trying to keep an open mind. Here's one of the drawings that was shared with me that I'm allowed to show you. Now, this is someone who said that they were being attacked by Asgard and that they are from those middle islands there surrounded by the bigger continents. So if anybody has any experience with drawing maps or any type of artistry, hit me up because I need some help finishing my own map. And I'm going to be adding this in there too. And this all comes back to this photo that we all saw about a year ago, and we don't know if it's fake or not. There's a lot of detail in it. And all of the AI checkers say that it is a real photo, and many people have different stories for how they got this, but I don't know what it is. It looks like there's an ice wall right next to green vegetation in some sort of egg city, and it kind of resembles what Admiral Byrd said 100 years ago when he flew over Antarctica and said he saw green land over there. So if anybody wants to go to Antarctica and see what secrets are actually there, and if there actually is an opening there, it looks like we have a new person who we need to have say the word Kninigan to reveal if she actually is a shapeshifter. Now, this is all hypothetical, but many people speculate that the Cardassians from Star Trek, an alien race, was actually based off of an actual real alien species that were sort of lizard reptilian-like. And this reminds me of a whole thing from when in middle school for me, when I was a little nerd. talking about Star Trek to people, what a mistake that was. And one time I brought up the Cardassians to somebody, and they said, "Oh, are you talking about the Kardashians?" And I was like, "No, I don't even know who that is. I don't keep up with like celebrities and all that." But what if she actually chose that last name as a sort of a hint to who she actually is? I don't know. It's a whole theory. But I do think it could possibly be true.
All right, guys, just a quick recap. We're going to dive as much as we can on this William Morris, try to get as far as we can on this video. So this is just a quick recap to see what we covered.
Alright everybody, I'm back. I'm not banned anymore, and I've got an amazing story to tell you about the first ever ice wall explorer in the late 1700s, Mr. William Morris. Now this entire story comes from written accounts that have been hidden for hundreds of years up until recently, when the author Nos Confunden wrote about his story after coming across these documents that basically just told what he had found beyond the ice wall and what he had to go through to come back and tell the story to the whole world without triggering another great reset. Now this story begins when William Morris's crew sailed all the way to Antarctica looking for the rumored Summer's Gate, which is supposedly an opening in the ice wall that only appears when it gets hot enough for the ice to melt and a boat to go through. Once they got over there, they actually did find a crack in the ice wall big enough for a boat to sail through, but they were too scared to go in. But it didn't even matter at that point because they were already too close and it sucked them through. Once they emerged the other side, they came across a vast new ocean as well as a red boat. That's all they described it as, just that it was red and that they had never seen anything like it before. The boat then blew a siren that was so loud and was hurting everyone on the crew, but I guess once they found out that William Morris and his crew were not a threat, that they let them onto their boat and they spoke to them and basically told them that William Morris and his crew escaped enslavement from the actual bad people in the world, and that these lands that were outside of the ice wall are actually the peaceful place, and that where we live is the place that there are evil leaders running everything. The captain in the red boat said that he was from the Ancestral Republic and that they have been trying to liberate the people from the Middle Earth area in the inner ice wall continents for hundreds of years, but they have not been able to because they keep causing great resets where the entire population is basically wiped out and the rest of the people are made in baby making factories and they're grown in a lab and stuff, like the Cabbage Patch Kids stuff. So after William Morris found out that he basically made it out of enslavement by living beyond the ice wall, he stayed there for 10 years, but he just eventually went crazy with all this amazing stuff that he was discovering, all these new technologies and how good life could be for most people, that he actually went back to Earth, the middle region, and was telling people about everything that he had seen, but he had to keep it as secretive as possible so that he doesn't cause another great reset and for all of humanity to be wiped out.
Now, William Morris, captain's talking about seeing underwater submerged objects fly out of the water and fly away. So, okay, now, William Morris is from the book, the Nos Confunden. That's where this whole idea came from. But he would have done the same thing. He would have left. Okay, now, William Morris is from the book, the Nos Confunden. That's where this whole idea came from. But he would have done the same thing. He would have left the United States, and he would have went south, and he found an opening somewhere here. They call it, I think, the Summer Gate. But he would have found an opening, and then he would have went through and found the same thing, the Ancestral Republic, which they said they were as far from the ice wall as we were, similar, just in the opposite direction. And that makes sense. They may have been right here. That's the same amount of distance to there as it is from the United States to there. So it all makes sense if you look at it from a broad perspective. So that's 1783. Now there was the late 1800s, E.W. Barrington did the same thing. And he found an opening. When he got close enough to the opening, he even said to his captain, let's go in there. And the captain's like, no, if we go in there, it's not wide enough for us to turn around. And if we come to a wall, then we're dead. But when they got close enough to it, it sucked them in. The current sucked them in, and they went in anyway. He called it the Barrington Strait. That was in the book, E.W. Barrington's book, The Iron Republic. That's another good read. If you like the Notes Confunding books, I would definitely recommend reading that. And there's even history on that, pictures of his boat and stuff. So that was a real journey. And he said the same thing, that he went through the ice wall and found more land. But I think the overall main point is that if you're going to travel long distances between these, the best vessel you could have is a dual purpose vessel. One that can fly and one that can be submerged and go underwater. And that's what we've heard from old sea captains talking about, seeing underwater submerged objects fly out of the water and fly away. So the best means of travel, if you're going to do mass distances, would be a vehicle that can do both.
Activate submersible. So this is basically a depiction of giants beyond the ice wall. So this is who they're possibly battling beyond the ice wall. To all you guys that seen Attack on Titan, what if I told you it was based on a true story?
A lot of these battles took place here in the known lands. It was the boom of the years of the Great Tartary and their technology based on free energy. Custodians and the Anunnaki saw their pyramids fall, and this is when they could no longer fight against the resistance. Their control was escaping them like water through their fingers. So after these huge wars, the Custodians wanted to do a reset right away, but they couldn't because their pyramids were not working. They were destroyed. That affected their power of manipulation on the environments. In chapter 12, it's telling us that the pyramids have something to do with all of these controlled environments, and maybe the ice wall itself. At this point, another war starts here in the known lands, and this time humanity would fight alongside the giants against their former fierce colonizers. Battle itself could not be described, as it created so much fear in the surrounding lands that no one was able to witness it. They only saw the aftermath of bodies piling up after it had already occurred. Bodies from both sides were observed laying in the lands. Areas were once covered in vast vegetations, but now they are nothing more than sand and dead landscapes. The Custodians' armies were kind of depleted because they had previously had a war with the Anunnaki. You see, the Custodians and Anunnaki are not friends, but sometimes they become allies. So their army was weakened and could not afford to start a new war right now. The humans and giants were on the path of a great victory. Something happened in the middle of that time that changed the outcome. The Custodians go to the Anunnaki lands, and they wanted to reach an agreement, which they needed their alliance to be able to defeat this new human and giant army that they were fighting. Their forces could not win alone. So in exchange for a lot of gold, the Anunnaki joined them. The Anunnaki also joined them because they were afraid of retaliation from this new power of humans and giant alliance. They thought it was their best interest to join the Custodians once again, that they had just fought in a war of their own to win this one. And get this, while the Custodians were planning with the Anunnaki on how to defeat the humans and the giants, they left an inferior race in command to watch over their lands. Guess who they were? The Greys, from Zeta Reticuli and the lands of Orion. This is how the Greys started observing the Earth. They were our watchers. But according to the story, the Greys did not agree with the old treaty, and the manipulation received. No one ever thought that humans would join the giants and now be this force to be reckoned with.
You know what? After discovering this video of this guy who went inside of a cave that looks exactly like a giant... You know what? After discovering this video of this guy who went inside of a cave that looks exactly like a giant esophagus, I am convinced that there were giant mountain-sized humanoids that used to live in the past. I mean, look at this thing. It looks exactly like the inside of our throats. I'll give you more evidence in this video, but I mean, look at this. There are so many coincidences where we see what looks like giant human body parts in nature. Like, what does that look like to you? Now check this out. This is another cave. What do you guys think this looks like? To me, it looks like human musculature. And this is where Himalayan pink salt comes from. So what you're putting on your human meat hot dog is the remains of a giant human, which is basically blood rocks. Let me know what you guys think. Is this fact or is it fiction?
Well, if we look at the stories about how the giants and the humans were fighting the Annunaki and custodians, it only lines up. This is what the wars may have looked like.
So this wall is symbolizing the walls of Atlantis. And the walls that you guys are calling the ice wall is actually a stone wall that was guarded by the ancient Elohim. And when the Zeta Greys came in to invade Atlantis, we were actually at the wall fighting. And so, of course, we started to lose this war. And this is when the Elohim had decreed to freeze the ice wall to destroy all of these creatures that the Zeta Greys were creating to wage war against our people. This is around the same time that the moon had came into position, the Zeta Greys warship, to engage in wars and conflicts with all the Elohim throughout the earth, creating clones and hybridized races to take over the people and establish chiefs and kingdoms all across the land. So these creatures that the Zeta Greys created were designed to attack the walls of Atlantis. And this is why we had froze it all and also put the electromagnetic dome over the earth to trap their warship here, which is the moon. These Zeta Greys were actually at war with each other and actually destroyed their whole district. And they had to flee and find another place that they could actually call home. And so when they found Atlantis, they seen that it was fruitful, and they seen that it had a lot of technology already there, and a lot of kingdoms and a lot of stuff, established things that were already built already. So they just thought that they could just come and just invade and take it using advanced technology and creating these hybridized species. And so that's what they did. That's why you see pyramids in the Antarctica, because this used to be unfrozen at one point.
Scientists have just admitted that Antarctica was once a jungle 90 million years ago. And they know this because they found fossilized plant roots. So you thought... Scientists have just admitted that Antarctica was once a jungle 90 million years ago. And they know this because they found fossilized plant roots down there, which means that the carbon dioxide levels used to be a lot higher millions of years ago. But they say that the climate changed because apparently the tectonic plates shifted. Now this makes me think that perhaps this is another instance of them trying to put the truth in plain sight, and to hint at the fact that there is a secret jungle down there with secret cities and green grass and vegetation growing everywhere. The truth is also often put in plain sight in our entertainment as well. Check out where these guys end up in this old X-Men show from the 90s.
A rainforest in Antarctic. Am I dreaming? Oh, John,
He's trying to hint at it and let us know.
The savage land, a valley hidden in perpetual mist, created eons ago for a purpose long forgotten.
Created by the lizard people eons ago. And he can walk now.
What would restore my powers? They're gone.
Because what I've heard about this place is it has a different effect on our biology as well. So who wants to cross the Antarctic Ocean with me so we can go find this place? It'd be pretty cool. Scientists have just admitted that Antarctica was one.
Yo, that used to be my favorite show. That's crazy. I completely do not remember this episode. But the fact that Charles can walk again, and this is in the middle of Antarctica, how cool is that? That's the 94 X-Men. That guitar went in, didn't it? Shout out if you guys used to watch that, man. I might have to watch it all over again just to see if I see this episode.
It looks like every single country is now evacuating to Antarctica because they know that the ice there is melting and they're looking for an opening in the ice wall to go and escape to, because they know they're losing the war here. Even though they signed this treaty that only allows them to go explore there, not civilians, only high-ranking government officials and scientists are allowed to go there, they are still trying to get away from it all. They already tried to make it past the ice wall by going on foot and using a crane to put them on top of it, but they realized that they couldn't make it that far because the conditions were too harsh. Then they tried digging a huge tunnel, but that didn't work either when they ran into sky ice. And if you don't know what that is, just look it up. But it's basically when oxygen gets so cold that it turns into a solid, and it's like a light blue color. They are looking for the lost civilizations beyond the ice wall because there's a different group of people that's been attacking them for the past 100 years in their underground tunnels. And this war against the government is being done by Valiant Thor from Venus. And here's some intel from back in March where he talks about lost technology and Atlantis being frozen underneath the ice. And here's another update from him where he says he's eradicating chimeras, serpents, and red jelly blobs. But what do you guys think? Is this all true, or is it all just made up? Is there a secret cabal that's being driven out of Earth and they're trying to find some way to escape? Or is it just nothing and this is all just a bunch of craziness? The long-rumored Earth octopus has been found, and if you don't know what that is, it's literally just an octopus that lives on the land and not the ocean. Now, I don't know if that video was real or not, but I do know that land octopus actually do exist, and they're called the Aculeatus, but they're much smaller and they only live on beaches and they just go there to hunt crabs. But there's also the long-running theory that the octopuses are actually aliens from other planets because their DNA is so much different than anything else that is on Earth. And when we hear the word extraterrestrial, it doesn't exactly have to mean from another planet, so that's why many people actually think that the octopus might be from beyond the ice wall. But it's all just a theory, so what do you guys think? I think that there's also a possibility that these animals are mutating and new ones are forming as well. This video got 50 million views, and it shows these two guys who were tweaking because they saw water that looked unlike anything they had ever seen before. And to be honest, I'd be tweaking as well if I were in this situation, because that water does not look normal, and I have no idea why it looks like that. It's sort of like glassy clear, as if it's some sort of other material. And I haven't figured out a scientific reason for why the water would be like this. Maybe there's more salt in it, but I have no idea. But we gotta figure out who these two guys are, because many people speculate that they actually tried to sail to Antarctica and see if they found new hidden land over there. Or maybe they actually did cross the ice wall and this is what it looks like when you go over there. The water is actually different. That would be just like mind-blowing, because if the water's that different, then the land's got to be like just super weird, like fourth dimensional or something.
But I mean, that's like just a different world.
But these guys are like freaking out here, so we got to figure out who these guys are. In the comment section, could you let me know or DM me?
What was that? You have got to take photos of that.
Yeah, he says you should take photos, but like I think a video would be much better.
Yeah.
Never guess what I just found. This time it wasn't a photo. It's what claims to be actual video footage of Beyond the Ice Wall. And I don't know how more people aren't talking about this. Before I show you the video, I'm going to quickly first show you the rumored Beyond the Ice Wall photo that we have here, which shows an ice city next to green vegetation right next to an ice wall. Here it is. Here's the video. This is the first one that I've seen that claims to be of Beyond the Ice Wall. And of course it is grainy and fuzzy and you really can't tell what's going on over there, but it looks like there's a regular looking city next to snow or ice or something. And then the camera zooms out to the distance and we can see what looks like an ice wall maybe. And here's the rest of the video, which shows at the end of it a palm tree, which really surprised me because it looked like it was in a snowy landscape. And I don't know how that's possible. And now here there's statues that I've never seen before, just out here. It looks like Antarctica to me. It could be in Russia or it could be at the North Pole, but I tried to do a background image search on this and it came up with nothing. So if anyone knows where these photos are from, could you let me know? I also wonder maybe if this is at the North Pole, because There are rumors that there is actual hidden land up there. If you look back at the maps from 500 years ago, there's a hidden continent over at the North Pole, and it's split up by 2 rivers, making it like 4 separate huge islands. So perhaps this is from over there, who knows, but these are very interesting photos, and they just got statues of, I don't even know what culture this would be. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before. There's the palm tree. But yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know.
That might be AI generated towards the end. I'm not saying the actual video in the beginning was real towards the city, was AI, I mean, but those end videos is quite possibly those are AI.
This is the recently uncovered flat Earth German map from World War II, and perhaps they are releasing it to give us hints of where they actually traveled to after the war. You can see that's Africa right there, so Europe would be right above. It looks a little bit different, but maybe they all escaped to these undocumented continents. You can see they're all charted here, and they all got German names. They even got a UFO here, which we've heard stuff about UFOs in Germany back in the day. I can't use the word that they were for because it'll get taken, the video will get taken down. That's why I had to block out these symbols on there. I wish I didn't have to do that, but it's a part of history. But all these places, you can see Asgard is right there too. Where did all these places come from? And maybe we heard many conspiracies about the Germans escaping to somewhere like South Argentina after the war, but what if they actually went to some of these other places that nobody else even knows about? And this map is getting released to like give hints to people of what actually happened. And here's this thing at the top again, which we don't even know what that is. I was thinking maybe it's the island underneath the Polaris North Star, which never moves. And there's even places out here, so I don't even know what this is. This is supposed to be the ice wall, but I guess people can like go live on there if this map is true. Maybe there actually is green grass and vegetation there. If you didn't know, this United States is based off of the moon map as well.
Of Earth resonate with you? Well, it's about to resonate way more. There's this theory that the moon represents our Earth, and only 1/4 is our known Earth, and it moves around, like the clock in Prague. As you can see, there's a constellation wheel. The sun and moon are both connected in the center of this. And honestly, what if this constellation wheel moves around in centuries of time around the entirety of Earth? I call this the 4/4 theory, like the 4 quarters in ancient cosmology and mythology. The 4 quarters of Earth that Enoch talks about. The 4 quarters in several Bible scriptures. And quarters definition is a fourth of something or a place in which you can dwell. Which it's weird that this is literally 1/4 of this, and it's the quarters in which we dwell. So is this moon projection that kind of looks like the land from Earth enough evidence for us to believe in something like this? Probably not, because really it doesn't match up perfectly, but I've got some evidence. In order for this theory to even be somewhat plausible, we need 3 things to be happening for sure. Number 1, the magnetic north would have to be moving. And guess what? It is. In the direction that it would need to be moving for this theory to be true. But wait, if the magnetic north and the magnetic field is moving northwest, north compared to what? That is the north. Wait, what if there's another north right here in the center? You know, the Mercator map has 4 quarters, 4 rivers, and an ultimate center. Doesn't that kind of look like it? But either way, we have 2 more major things for this to be even plausible, and that is the ice in Antarctica, West Antarctica to be exact, should be melting, and the ice in East Antarctica should be freezing. And it is. This is all melting, and this is all freezing, and has a higher elevation. Why? Well, because it's constantly freezing more. And the lower elevation is because it's melting more. Now, also, direct sunlight in Africa should be increasing. The Sahara Desert should be growing. South to be exact. Isn't that something? Huh. Yeah, you should maybe do some math too here, because it's weird at the rate that it's moving. Okay, fine, but South America should be increasingly freezing more. And it is. Yeah, that's right, it is. Here's what's cool too. This explains silly climate change and ice ages too. Not to mention finding strange animals and structures in the ice that's melting in Antarctica. Oh, the climate crisis, it's you and my's fault. What if they're just using this crisis to get some money, but then also to say you're the problem? You know, you're the one who's causing these emissions. No, come on. Hey, and also, we are not having an energy crisis either. Think about the old world ships. This place was like an entire city that floated around, charged on these Tesla coils. Look, we can harness the ether energy, and I think they're doing that, throwing a price tag on it. But that's the thing. This theory, it brings all of the conspiracies kind of together. Makes it obvious of what they've been hiding. They throw stuff like this out there, and this with zero evidence as to how this could even be, when all the while a model like this explains everything. Just think about it. So when they said flat earth was a psyop, maybe it kinda is. Maybe they're only giving us 1/4 of what we really need to be looking into. By the way, I don't use this moon projection as all of my evidence. No, I look at all of the other things that line this thing up for a home run.
And they all got German names.
But look at this though. Why would they have UFOs in this moon map though? On the outer edge. You would need these type of devices like they're saying that would have to fly by air and be submersible to get to these different places. Because look, is this actual proof that they see UFOs as soon as they go near the outer edge? Drop your thoughts below.
Technology and bones were as sadly hidden and forgotten as the greatness of their history. And new discoveries of giants will be today and in the future simply ridiculed. Some even intermingled with beasts that never inhabited these lands, the eternal known lands, where their oceans are stained with ancestral blood.
All right, now you heard what she just said, right? Now check this out. This is literally called Blood Falls in Antarctica. I'm not making this up. There, you guys can see it. Plain as day. Blood Falls 2006. Drop in the comments your thoughts below. They didn't earth no sheep. They didn't, nothing bad happened to any, polar bear or anything. This is literally coming out of the ground. So let that sink in what she just said. Now let's do a quick recap on everything that was said on the Antarctic War, the ice wall, and all that.
Hollow Earth and Inner Earth topic is starting to gain momentum. It's not just a whisper anymore, but a reality. The hole that Admiral Byrd flew into over the North Pole, this is it. It's quickly becoming a thing. It's real. And the Russians' release of the Mir space station and the footage that it gathered, it's mind-blowing. In addition to this footage, Russia even stated the sole purpose of the Mir space station was to monitor the hole over the North Pole. And the pictures on top are from a 1903 expedition into the Hollow Earth from the photographer that went and never came back. Yet his album was found nearly 2,000 feet below the surface. Mammoth Caves, Kentucky. This Hollow Earth and Inner Earth topic is starting to gain momentum.
So you mean to tell me that they actually flew inside that, and this is the entrance into Hollow Earth, aka Agartha? This is how they're able to get into there. And did you hear what he said? He said the Russian Space Center, or the Space Center, was originally built to keep tabs over this pole. And we're diving into this today, so you better lock in and buckle up, bucko.
The Garden of Eden, which is spoken about in the Bible, is on the earth right now. It also accompanies the largest mountain in the world, which is being hidden from you, which is the holy mountain of God, Mount Zion. So they have told us that there is no land at the North Pole, except all the early NASA satellite footage has these black holes at the center where something is being hidden. It's the Garden of Eden and the Mount Zion. This is an early map of the North Pole from the 1500s. You have a mountain here in the middle with a whirlpool, and then 4 rivers coming out of that whirlpool. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. You have Mount Zion, and then under Mount Zion you have the Garden of Eden. You have the whirlpool, or the river, coming out from underneath there. And then that river breaks into 4 heads. In the center here, it's called the Rupus Nigra, which translates to Black Rock, which is also the name of the largest investment company in the world. Coincidence? I think not. I also took a live windfinder shot of the North Pole where they say there's no land, but there's this massive diversion of wind here at the North Pole. It is Mount Zion. And how do I know the Garden of Eden is here too? Well, first, remember, we have the 4 rivers. Ezekiel 29, verse 13, Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. So Mercator, when he made this map, he actually sent it in a letter to John Dee in 1577. John Dee was an advisor to Queen Elizabeth, so this letter was literally sent to the Queen. This mountain was also depicted by many ancient cosmologists. It's not a coincidence that Paramount has it in their logo. Then what do you think this represents? It represents God's firmament with the stars inside the firmament. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. Now, if you didn't know, on the flat earth map, the North Pole is literally at the very center, so this mountain is at the center of the flat earth. Just how it's depicted here. Now we're going to read this scripture from the book of Enoch, which was removed from the Bible. From thence I proceeded to the middle of the earth, and beheld a happy and fertile spot. So Enoch was in the middle of the earth. Then I saw a holy mountain. And underneath it water on the eastern side, which flowed towards the south. Guys, literally just pull up a live windfinder view and go to the North Pole, and you can clearly see there's something huge there. If you want to learn more about this, go download the True Earth book right now. It tells you all these hidden things about the flat earth. It also comes with access to our private Discord community. So wake up. They don't want you to know this stuff because it proves the existence of God, and it proves that His word is true. God bless you. I'll see you in the next one.
Nobody's gonna know.
They're gonna know.
How would they know? How would they know?
Jesus. One of 178 lands.
These of Antarctica do not exist as long as they are not seen. But you get through the frequency fence, a whole new world opens up. This past weekend, frequency fence went down, and almost all of Antarctica, mainly New Swabia. Believe it, this is Antarctica. Grab your popcorn. Frequency fence down.
What is that creature on the back is my question. Is that just some type of spotlight on the rock, or is that literally some type of creature in the back? Obviously this is underground, but where?
I was about 6 years old when I went on my first official trip. I was going with my father and my grandpa Sinclair up to the North Pole. Up to the North Pole. It was a very glamorous destination, but the best scientific, military installation, top secret mission. The existence of this high-security Arctic base. But the existence of this high-security Arctic base was exactly that. We drove slowly through and past the buildings, all of them very gray, gloomy.
What was there at the North Pole? What he saw during the North Pole visit? Why it was a glamorous destination? Why there was a top secret military base? Let's go deeper. What is there at the center of the flat Earth? Rupes nigra et altissima, black and very high rock. and hidden for islands around the magnetic rock. Magnetic black rock at the center of the flat Earth. Does magnetic black rock affect winds at the center of flat Earth?
Sometimes you have to step back and back some more in order to see something so very big. The anomaly is just a case of perspective. To back up far enough enables you to see what they have been hiding from you and me. It is Rupes Nigra, the black magnetic rock at the North Pole. They had to step back all the way to Antarctica to see it, from 165,000 feet in the air. Mind-blowing. Sometimes.
Are you guys aware that we have an inner Earth civilization that lives underground? Earth is actually hollowed out, and it's different beings that live inside the planet. Inner Earth is called Agartha, with the capital city being Shambhala. This is a real place, and these beings that stay there have a higher conscience than us and more spiritually advanced. The women inside of Agartha is 10 to 12 feet tall, and the men are even taller. These beings have the conscience of the 9th and the 12th dimension. Meanwhile, us up here on the surface are anywhere from the 3rd to the 5th dimension. And they are the ones who run the capital city of Shambhala. You would also have the Delros. These are really tall, heavy-set people, and they need an advanced wheelchair to get around. Their wheelchairs will levitate in the air and take them anywhere they need to go. These species of people also mix their seeds with each other and made new species. We have portals and stargates underground, and they are protected by the Guardians. Some of these people inside the Earth are survivors of the Atlantis flood. That is also known as Noah's flood in the Bible. And majority of these people use telepathy. They will send brain waves through your brain to communicate with you. So these beings rarely talk in the inner Earth, and they will only let the righteous ones come down. Peace and Ashe. Hope y'all like the lecture. Richard E. Byrd's diary, February, March 1947. The land beyond the poles. The exploration flight over the North Pole. The inner Earth. My secret diary. I must write this diary in secrecy and obscurity. It concerns my Arctic flight of the 19th day of February in the year of 1947. There comes a time when the rationality of men must fade into insignificance, and one must accept the inevitability of the truth. I am not at liberty to disclose the following documentation at this writing. Perhaps it shall never see the light of public scrutiny. But I must do my duty and record here for all to read one day. In a world of greed and exploitation of certain of mankind, one can no longer suppress that which is truth. Flight log, Base Camp Arctic. February 19th, 1947. 0600 hours. All preparations are complete for our flight northward, and we are airborne with full fuel tanks at 0610 hours. 0910 hours. Vast ice and snow below. 0915 hours. In the distance is what appears to be mountains. 1000 hours. We are crossing over the small mountain range and still proceeding northward as best as can be ascertained. Beyond the mountain range is what appears to be a valley with a small river or stream running through the center portion. There should be no green valley below. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal here. We should be over ice and snow. To the port side are great forests growing on the mountain slopes. Our navigation instruments are still spinning. The gyroscope is oscillating back and forth. 10:05 hours. I alter altitude to 1400 feet and execute a sharp left turn to better examine the valley below. It is green with either moss or a type of tight-knit grass. The light here seems different. I cannot see the sun anymore. We make another left turn and we spot what seems to be a large animal of some kind below us. It appears to be an elephant. No, it looks more like a mammoth. This is incredible, yet there it is. Decrease altitude to 1,000 feet and take binoculars to better examine the animal. It is confirmed. It is definitely a mammoth-like animal. Report this to base camp. 10:30 hours. The external temperature indicator reads 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Continuing on our heading now. Navigation instruments seem normal now. I am puzzled over their actions. Attempt to contact base camp. Radio is not functioning. 11:30 hours. Countryside below is more level and normal, if I may use that word. Ahead we spot what seems to be a city. This is impossible. Aircraft seems light and oddly buoyant. The controls refuse to respond. My God! Off our port and starboard wings are a strange type of aircraft. They are closing rapidly alongside. They are disc-shaped and have a radiant quality to them. They're close enough now to see the markings on them. It is a type of swastika. This is fantastic. Where are we? What has happened? I tug at the controls again. They will not respond. We are caught in an invisible vice grip of some type. 11:35 hours. Our radio crackles and a voice comes through in English with what perhaps is a slight Nordic or Germanic accent. The message is, "Welcome, Admiral, to our domain. We shall land you in exactly 7 minutes. Relax, Admiral. You're in good hands." I note the engines of our plane have stopped running. The aircraft is under some strange control and is now turning itself. The controls are useless. 11:40 hours. Another radio message received. We begin the landing process now, and in moments the plane shudders slightly and begins a descent as though caught in some great unseen elevator. The downward motion is negligible, and we touch down with only a slight jolt. 11:45 hours. I am making a hasty last entry in the flight log. Several men are approaching on foot toward our aircraft. They are tall, with blonde hair. In the distance is a large shimmering city, pulsating with rainbow hues of color. I do not know what's going to happen now, but I see no signs of weapons on those approaching. I hear now a voice ordering me by name to open the cargo door. I comply. End log. From this point, I write all the following events here from memory.
Oh, we gotta go into part 2. This is getting juicy. Is he in Hollow Earth? Is this real?
It defies the imagination and would seem all but madness. It defies the imagination. It would seem all but madness if it had not happened. The radio man and I are taken from the aircraft, and we are received in a most cordial manner. We were then boarded on a small platform-like conveyance with no wheels. It moves us toward the glowing city with great swiftness. As we approach, the city seems to be made of a crystal material. Soon, we arrive at a large building that is a type I have never seen before. It appears to be right out of the design board of Frank Lloyd Wright, or perhaps more correctly, out of a Buck Rogers setting. We are given some type of warm beverage which tasted like nothing I have ever savored before. It is delicious. After about 10 minutes, two of our wondrous appearing hosts come to our quarters and announce that I am to accompany them. I have no choice but to comply. I leave my radio man behind, and we walk a short distance and enter into what seems to be an elevator. We descend downward for some moments, and the machine stops, and the door lifts silently upward. We then proceed down a long hallway that is lit by rose-colored light that seems to be emanating from the very walls themselves. One of the beings motions for us to stop before a great door. Over the door is an inscription that I cannot read. The great door slides noiselessly open, and I am beckoned to enter. One of my hosts speaks. "Have no fear, Admiral. You are to have an audience with the Master." I step inside, and my eyes adjust to the beautiful coloration that seems to be filling the room completely. Then I begin to see my surroundings. What greeted my eyes is the most beautiful sight of my entire existence. It is, in fact, too beautiful and wondrous to describe. It is exquisite and delicate. I do not think there exists a human term that can describe it in any detail with justice. My thoughts are interrupted in a cordial manner by a warm, rich voice of melodious quality. "I bid you welcome to our domain, Admiral." I see a man with delicate features and with the etching of years upon his face. He is seated at a long table. He motions me to sit down in one of the chairs. After I am seated, he places his fingertips together and smiles. He speaks softly again and conveys the following. "We have let you enter here because you are of noble character and well known on the surface world." "Surface world," I half gasp under my breath. "Yes," the Master replies with a smile. "You are in the domain of the Ariani, the inner world of the Earth. We shall not long delay your mission, and you will be safely escorted back to the surface and for a distance beyond. But now, Admiral, I shall tell you why you have been summoned here. Our interest right..." It was at that alarming time we sent our flying machines, the Flugerods, to your surface world to investigate what your race had done. That is, of course, past history now, my dear Admiral, but I must continue on. You see, we have never interfered before in your race's wars and barbarity, but now we must, for you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not for man, namely, that of atomic energy. Our emissaries have already delivered messages to the powers of your world, and yet they do not heed. Now you have been chosen to be witness here that our world does exist. You see, our culture and science is many thousands of years beyond your race, Admiral. I interrupted, but what does this have to do with me, sir? The Master's eyes seemed to penetrate deeply into my mind, and after studying me for a few moments, he replied, "Your race has now reached the point of no return, for there are those among you who would destroy your very world, rather than relinquish their power as they know it." I nodded, and the Master continued, "In 1945 and afterward, we tried to contact your race, but our efforts were met with hostility. Our Flugerods were fired upon, yes, even pursued with malice and animosity by your fighter planes. So, it defies the imagination."
It's getting good. I gotta find part 3. They firing on the Flugerods.
And the Master continued, "In 1945 and afterward, we tried to contact your race, but our efforts were met with hostility. Our Flugerods were fired upon, yes, even pursued with malice and animosity by your fighter planes. So, now I say to you, my son, there is a great storm gathering in your world, a black fury that will not spend itself for many years. There will be no answer in your arms. There will be no safety in your science. It may rage on until every flower of your culture is trampled. and all human things are leveled in vast chaos. Your recent war was only a prelude of what is yet to come for your race. We here see it more clearly with each hour. Do you say I'm mistaken? No, I answer. It happened once before. The Dark Ages came and they lasted for more than 500 years. Yes, my son, replied the Master. The Dark Ages that will come now for your race will cover the earth like a pall. But I believe that some of your race will live through the storm. Beyond that, I cannot say. We see at a great distance a new world stirring from the ruins of your race, seeking its lost and legendary treasures. And they will be here, my son, safe in our keeping. When that time arrives, we shall come forward again to help revive your culture and your race. Perhaps by then, you will have learned the futility of war and its strife. And after that time, certain of your culture and science will be returned for your race to begin anew. You, my son, are to return to the surface world with this message. With these closing words, our meeting seemed at an end. I stood for a moment as in a dream, but yet I knew this was reality, and for some strange reason I bowed slightly, either out of respect or humility. I do not know which. Suddenly I was again aware that the two beautiful hosts who had brought me here were again at my side. This way, Admiral, motioned one. I turned once more before leaving and looked back toward the Master. A gentle smile was etched on his delicate and ancient face. Farewell, my son, he spoke. Then he gestured with a lovely, slender hand motion of peace, and our meeting was truly ended. And the Master continued. In 1945 and afterward,
The Secret Diary of Admiral Byrd.
If you think there is nothing at the North Pole, you have been deceived. This is a real map of the North Pole. When we look into today's world map, you'll see that there's nothing at the North Pole. I did some research on Google whether there is or nothing over there, and yet they are lying. Let's go into the book of Enoch that was removed from the Bible. Enoch 26 to 1 to 2, and from there I went to the middle of the earth and saw a blessed, well-watered place, which had branches which remained alive and sprouted from a tree which had been cut down. And there I saw a holy mountain, and under the mountain, to the east of it, there was water, and it flowed towards the south. So Enoch went to the center of the earth and what we called the North Pole. It also explains where the tree of life used to be located. Jubilees 8:19, and he knew that the Garden of Eden is the Holy of Holies, and the dwelling of the Lord, and Mount Sinai the center of the desert, and Mount Zion, the center of the navel of the earth. These three were created as holy places, facing each other. This is a wind finder at the North Pole. You can see as it appears something huge. I also did some research that the North Pole is Rups Nigra.
The Rups Nigra was believed to be a huge magnetic rock, 180 kilometers in diameter, which explained why compasses pointed north. The origin of this belief was 14th century Phoenician friar who claimed to be explored to the North Atlantic.
Mount Zion is probably located at the North Pole. If you think there is nothing at the North Pole,
Enoch been in the center though? Man, that's gonna take some processing.
Footage seen from a Russian military plane. This is what the portal to you.
So just sit back. We're gonna cover as much as we can possible that is out on the internet right now. There, you guys see it. Blood falls.
Do you believe they're hiding more land from us? Well, I do.
And I'm not even talking outside of the ice walls. The ice walls that surround our level flat realm and contain all the water of the oceans. No, I'm talking places like the North Pole, where they just show desolate water. And maybe even places near Australia. Because when you look at old maps, like this Mercator map from 1569, you see places like this, and when blown up, look like this. And this North Pole, where they show that desolate water, is no longer on the maps. Now, did this disappear, or are they just hiding what our compasses are drawn to in the center of our flat realm? Because not only do they have treaties like the North Pole Treaty that prevents any independent travel to this area, but they also spent millions of dollars and thousands of hours of manpower creating what they call the dew line that is supposedly supposed to detect if anyone is coming across to the United States. But in my opinion, it's to detect if anyone's going towards that center.
Above the Arctic Circle comes the first film report of a 3,000-mile radar warning network across the top of the world. The distant early warning line, the dew line. In camps like this, from Baffin Bay across the continent to the Bering Sea, 5,000 men are working. With steam-assisted pile drivers, they are forging an electronic chain to give North America 6 hours of warning of enemy attack.
And that creation of that dew line just coincidentally happened to come a few years after Admiral Richard Byrd took a flight to the North Pole and didn't report seeing ice and snow, but land areas consisting of mountains, forest, green vegetation, lakes and rivers, and even an animal resembling a mammoth. So not only do I think they're hiding things in the north, but I think they're hiding things in the south. Because Lord knows, these controllers of the world, they like to put things in plain sight in movies. And when you look at current maps or globes, and they look like this, but they show us this. And when you look at the logo for the United Nations that just happens to be a flat Earth map in Australia, looks a bit longer than in the normal maps. And when you look at the Hammond map that just happens to be the map that all the pilots use and happens to be an exact match for the flat Earth map, and again, Australia looks longer than they show us, you have to ask yourself, would they hide land from us? Would they hide it so we don't know the exact nature of this realm we live in? Would they hide it so they can have their own private islands, not governed by any officials? I know what I think.
Not just a private island, but I would say a private continent, damn near.
But I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments. And as always, this video was only opinion. I wasn't serious. It's satire and just entertainment.
So this wall is symbolizing the walls of Atlantis. And the walls that you guys are calling the ice wall is actually a stone wall that was guarded by the ancient Elohim. And when the Zeta Grays came in to invade Atlantis, we were actually at the wall fighting. And so, of course, we started to lose this war. And this is when the Elohim had decreed to freeze the ice wall to destroy all of these creatures that the Zeta Grays were creating to wage war against our people. This is around the same time that the moon had came into position, the Zeta Grays warship, to engage in wars and conflicts with all the Elohim throughout the earth, creating clones and hybridized races to take over the people and establish chiefs and kingdoms all across the land. So these creatures that the Zeta Grays created were designed to attack the walls of Atlantis. And this is why we had froze it all and also put the electromagnetic dome over the earth to trap their warship here, which is the moon. These Zeta Grays were actually at war with each other and actually destroyed their whole district. And they had to flee and find another place that they could actually call home. And so when they found Atlantis, they seen that it was fruitful, and they seen that it had a lot of technology already there, and a lot of kingdoms and a lot of stuff, established things that were already built already. So they just thought that they could just come and just invade and take it using advanced technology and creating these hybridized species. And so that's what they did. That's why you see pyramids in the Antarctica, because this used to be unfrozen at one point in time.
Because look, they're literally fighting them off. And he said it was a normal wall, and then they froze it over. This is giving me like Great Wall of Tartaria vibes, but they made an even bigger wall. This isn't the first wall they ever made. Oh my God. What are these creatures? It says Sophia, Mother Earth, Gaia is blowing smoke rings to rejoice our victory of the light. There's a party going on under Mount Etna. The last of the alpha draconian reptiles on the Earth were taken out by white hat super soldiers there. What in the world is going on? This video is strictly for entertainment purposes only. None of this is factual or have been proven. With that being said,
I'm going to show you a leaked photo of Beyond the Ice Wall as well as who exactly sent it. And this place exists alongside one of the actual areas on the ice wall where there's land, but we're not sure which gate or area in Antarctica this actually is. Now, this isn't a new photo. I'm going to show that one to you next, but this is the one that came out about a year ago, and a lot of people actually think that this one is real. It shows vegetation, an ice wall, and an advanced egg-like type city going on back there. Now, here's the new photo of what is supposedly beyond the ice wall, which shows vegetation next to ice, which is what Admiral Byrd talked about when he flew over Antarctica. And a lot of people are thinking that this is actually up close to that egg-like type city. And now let me tell you who actually leaked this photo. The person who leaked it on their Telegram was Valiant Thor, who, if you've never heard of him, he's from Venus, supposedly, and he came to Earth in the 1950s. I also did a reverse image search to see if this was from Greenland or something, but I couldn't find anything, and that's because this is unlike anything we've ever seen before, where there's ice right next to healthy green vegetation. It'd have to be super cold for the ice to stay in a formation just like that. And I also don't think this is AI generated because there's no abnormalities in the grass or anything.
that leaked image, the first one he showed, let me go to it. This one, this looks familiar. Like they took this out of Star Wars or something. I'm not sure about this one. It's interesting though, and they look like they both might be similar, but I can't say for sure if this is real. Normally I would say, man, this isn't edited, but this one, it's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility. Let me know your thoughts below.
Ever since 2024 began, people have been seeing Earth's second sun more often and have been wondering if it's real or not. And I'm here to tell you that it actually is. And we actually have 3 of them, but the third one is so far away that we can't even see it. We can only see the second one right now because it's just barely in view. So we have our sun that exists in Middle Earth in our area where we live. Then there's the second ring that has another sun that revolves inside of this red line. That's what the red line is for. It's to show the path that the sun takes. And then there's the third ring, which has the third sun that we're not really able to see ever. And this goes all the way around on this donut-shaped map. And if you remember that the movies show us the truth in plain sight, in Star Wars, Luke looks at the twin suns, and one of them is brighter than the other, and one is more reddish-shaped, just like the one we saw in the video. There are many videos flying around of these twin suns, and in my opinion, it would be really hard to CGI. Ever since 2024 began, people have been...
That is fascinating. And it lines up with the story that was told. One sun, there was 2 suns in the sky from the story that we were watching yesterday by, I forgot her name, but we'll put it in the future because we're going to finish where we left off yesterday. But the stories do match up about one sun being brighter than the others. So that's just a correlation to those 2 stories.
Dude, what is this right here? This is a ice wall monster. I don't know. Check it out. I mean, it could be Godzilla for all we know.
Or a Leviathan.
Like a frozen megalodon.
What in the world was that? Was it just an iceberg breaking off and falling? But how could it launch in the air like that is my question.
Apparently there was something massive that left Antarctica during the solar eclipse. It was caught on the radar and it's moving up towards the Atlantic, and it's also kind of getting like bigger as it's moving up. Some people are saying that they think it might be like an underwater iceberg that broke off and is now moving, but they're saying they've never seen something like this before. It was really weird that it happened during the eclipse, and there are a lot of conspiracy theories and rumors about Antarctica. Watch the whole thing yourself. Let me know what you think in the comments. I need to hear what you guys think.
Trying to document this very weird anomaly taking place on Ventu Sky. I don't know what this blob is here, but it's coming from what looks like Antarctica. If we backtrack a little bit, you're going to see it disappear and reappear on the screen. So we move into Monday the 8th, which was obviously 3 days ago. Watch as we move into Tuesday. This mass pops up with waves of 83.7 feet in height. What in God's name is this thing moving out of Antarctica, as you can see, and then it moves up the coast of Africa into the Atlantic Ocean. Watch this as we move into Wednesday the 10th, Thursday the 11th, which is today. This is going on right now. I don't know if these waves are actually hitting the coast or if this is some sort of glitch in the system, but I've never seen anything like this. This giant blob is showing 83.7 foot waves. This does not seem to be any sort of storm system. Let me zoom back out here. Let's move forward and see where this thing is projected to go. Watch this. Here's Friday the 12th tomorrow, moving more up the African coast. Here is Saturday the 13th. We can see it start to wrap around the northern western coast of Africa up into the Atlantic. Here is Sunday the 14th. Monday the 15th, we are in the Atlantic Ocean with waves of 62.1, 63 feet. This is just incredible. Here is Tuesday the 16th, and look, the entire thing is now in the Atlantic Ocean with averages of about 40 feet. There's 44, 33, 34.3. This is just very weird. What are we looking at here? Here's Wednesday the 17th, the last available data for this. And now we see the entire Atlantic Ocean, which, as we've discussed, is already months ahead of time as far as temperatures. And we're looking at this very odd anomaly coming out of Antarctica. Now watch, I'm going to backtrack. I'll show you where this thing begins. We'll go all the way back to Monday the 8th. This is where the anomaly begins, and sometimes it glitches out. It's very weird. Here's Tuesday the 9th, and there it is. Pops right up. It's almost like this thing shot out of Antarctica and up towards the African coast. And as we backtrack in hours, we go to 5 a.m., 8 a.m., 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m., 8 p.m., and that's where it pops up between 5 and 8 p.m. This thing does not exist, and then it does exist on Tuesday the 9th at 8 p.m. After that, it just slowly moves up into the African coast. Here is the 10th once again, Thursday the 11th, Friday the 12th, Saturday the 13th.
What is that thing? It is absolutely massive. It's kind of giving me those Antarctic ship vibes from the ancestor lands.
Sunday the 14th, Monday the 15th, and then Tuesday and Wednesday, this thing bleeds all the way into the Atlantic Ocean. My friends, what are we looking at here?
Book was based on stories told by a woman named Helen Morris. She was the daughter of famous navigator William Morris. She also claims to have been born in the land beyond the ice walls. This book mentions the Great Dome contains 178 worlds, including Earth, in their own smaller domes. The most common way to pass through these domes is through water, where there are often open passages that connect the inner outer worlds. Almost like the membranes in a cell, functioning as a barrier that can allow at a certain time a passage.
Mira eso, hay algo ahí. Mira algo ahí. Míralo. Yo no sé qué carajo es eso, dale para atrás. Si no quieres saber, dale.
What is that? Look, it's got like an eye or something. What is this? Guys, one more time. What is that? It looked like a creature. I'm sorry. A couple little iceberg rocks falling off is not going to make something like that pop off. Look at that. What in the world is protruding out of those cold waters? That's got to be some type of creature, man, or some type of spaceship. It's either some unknown tech from beyond the ice wall or some type of giant creature. They definitely keeping us inside. Unbelievable. What is trying to keep us inside the wall? What was that? Drop in the comments below what you think that is. Sea monster? Some type of underwater ship that they're talking about? You need something that can go in the air and something that can go underwater. So I'm starting to think these airships was a lot more versatile and capable of doing stuff than I even could imagine. You know? Imagine an airship going underwater as well? That is crazy. Let me know your thoughts below on that.
Discovered by his son after his death, Admiral Byrd tells an extraordinary story.
Admiral Byrd heard there was an entrance to the center of the Earth through the South Pole. And he took planes into the South, under the South Pole. And when he did that, he discovered that as he flew over the pole, suddenly he's looking at things that shouldn't be there. I mean, it was temperate. His squadron flew under the Earth, into the Earth.
It turns into this lush and green area, and he can't even believe his eyes. But that's just the beginning of his extraordinary story. He tells how all of a sudden he starts to see a shimmering rainbow city that's made of crystal. His airplane is taken control of when he suddenly sees these flying disc-shaped objects around them that lead him to the ground, whereupon he's escorted into a cavernous type of an area where he meets a being he refers to as the Master in his diary.
All right, this says China's artificial sun.
Seven, 6, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4,
There's no way this could be fake. As you can see, it launched off some platform and the water ripples aren't speeded up. So y'all tell me. This is an Antarctic military base. I believe hearing stories of this. You got to think, what are they really conducting on this base? What are they doing? And it looks like it's right on a pyramid. Like this structure right here to the right, pyramid. They could be digging off into there and this could go down into the ground if you ask me. Look at the reflection. Watch the reflection. A pure pyramid. You see it. Something fishy is going on with that base. McMurdo. Let's dive into that. What type of Operation Starfish Supreme beam is that? A Lidar laser? We gotta type that in.
Oh, what is that? Look at that. Look at that. You scared me. You definitely scared me. Look at that. Look. What the?
Look at the technology that says a Lidar from plane. It's like they're surveying. A Lidar laser. Drop in the comments if you know more about this Lidar laser.
Lidar is a remote sensing technology that uses laser light to measure distances and create detailed three-dimensional maps or models of objects and environments. To create these maps and models, Lidar systems often employ scanning mechanisms that allow their laser pulses to be emitted in different directions, covering a wider area or capturing multiple angles. Sensors measure the time it takes for the laser pulses to return and how they reflect off of objects or surfaces. By combining the measurements from different laser pulses, a point cloud, a collection of millions of individual points in 3D space, each representing a location with XYZ coordinates and additional attributes such as intensity or color, is generated. The laser pulses emitted by Lidar systems can be narrowly focused, allowing them to penetrate small openings and generate detailed point clouds of the underlying terrain. Because it uses a shorter wavelength, Lidar can generate accurate elevation models of the terrain even under dense forest canopies. Radar, on the other hand, uses longer radio waves that tend to scatter or reflect off the leaves and branches of trees, so that's why radar can't see into the Amazon. If you've seen Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan's podcast, then you're aware that Lidar systems have uncovered a plethora of ancient sites throughout the Amazon, challenging the prevailing assumption that the Amazon rainforest was sparsely populated before European colonization. Even though this is the coolest thing that Lidar does, it's an extremely versatile tool in even more fields. For example, Lidar plays a crucial role in enabling autonomous vehicles to navigate and perceive their surroundings. Lidar data has also been used in urban planning projects to assess the impact of new infrastructure. Let me know what I left out, and let me know what your favorite color is, because it's the wrong one.
How you gonna tell me my favorite color is wrong? This Lidar laser. Use it for, you see those Teslas self-driving? They shooting this Lidar laser so it can see. You know why they shooting a Lidar laser in the Antarctica? It just hit me. The reason they're showing that they're shooting a Lidar laser in Antarctica because of the invisible ships that's crossing the Antarctic wall. They're trying to spot it. Why else would they have a Lidar base down in the Antarctic Treaty? Why else would they have an Antarctic base that specializes in Lidar lasers? The reason they're doing that is so they can spot cloaked ships, cloaked airships. You just showing how you can do it in the Amazon rainforest, and you can see the hole below the trees and all that. They looking for those cloaked ships for entertainment purposes only. People from the ancient lands is trying to get us. You know, they might have, you know, people that's low key around here, you know, for entertainment purposes only.
As the plane reaches its target area, an advanced scanning technology called Lidar is used to fire laser pulses through the trees at the ground below. When the resulting data is later compiled into a three-dimensional rendering of the area, the scientists are stunned by what they see.
Once LiDAR got involved, we saw roads leading out into other city centers. We saw thousands upon thousands of houses. Collectively, all the areas that they covered were over 60,000 new buildings that we didn't see before.
Look at these murals found in these structures. We know what kind of people they were. We know the truth now.
Drop in the comments your thoughts on that.
Have you ever heard of Lidar? It's a remote sensing technique that uses lasers to see the world in 3D. Pulses of laser light are shot out, and then a sensitive detector can tell how long it takes for that light to hit a spot on the object and scatter or reflect back to the detector. Radar and sonar essentially do the same thing with radio or sound waves. Lidar is used in everything from helping self-driving cars navigate, to creating maps of areas below drones or aircraft, to augmented reality and consumer electronics, letting you see what's really there as well as additional virtual stuff put on the image. One type of LiDAR that's well suited for those augmented reality applications is called flash LiDAR. While instead of scanning a bunch of laser pulses all across an object, a big flash, a single pulse, is sent across a wider area. Flash LiDAR systems can be made really small and incorporated into electronics like tablets and smartphones. They're made out of lasers, lenses that collimate the light, and diffractive elements, which have tiny patterns on them that can manipulate light in different ways. The lasers usually use wavelengths that are invisible to our eyes. An imaging system is also used to collect the light coming back into the device. All of the glass and plastic pieces needed to do this are usually modeled in optical design software, like Optic Studio by Ansys.
Look, I just typed it in. What is the largest research station? Not only is it the largest research base, but also the largest community in Antarctic. McMurdo Station is a year-round facility on the Hut Point Peninsula of Ross Island that houses as many 1,200 personnel during austral summer with 150 winters. Research stations in Antarctica. Look at how many research stations they have. The purpose of the Antarctic Research Stations is a collection of scientific information, Antarctica's comparably pristine state plus superlactive ice sheet environment and climate, long geological isolation and polar position, other basic physical characters make it a singular study zone for a broad array of scientific disciplines. They got them all along the ice wall if we look at the correct one for entertainment purposes only. So you got to ask yourself, why do they have so many research stations in Antarctica? I guarantee you each one of those Antarctic research stations all around the world, you know, South America's, Africa's, North America's research bases, Australia's, all around. You see this? This might not be what it actually looked like. It might look like something around this wall. And you're taking all these and you're spreading it all along the wall for entertainment purposes only. None of this is factual, just theories.
This might be one of the cooler things I've seen since moving to Alaska. This is the Permafrost Tunnel Research Facility. It's located in Fox, Alaska, and although the tunnels aren't open to the public, they occasionally facilitate small tours. Here in the visitor center, we geared up with hard hats, flashlights, and super warm puffy coats because it was about negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside and roughly negative 5 in the tunnels. You enter through what looks like a walk-in refrigerator door, and behind it lies hundreds of feet of tunnels carved into permafrost, which is soil that's frozen for 2 or more consecutive years. They were originally created to help engineers evaluate underground excavation techniques in permafrost, but they have since evolved into a natural laboratory for environmental and engineering studies. Within these walls, you'll see exposed ice wedges, preserved roots, grasses, and even animal bones from woolly mammoths, steppe bison, and horses. You'll also see there's lots of organic material falling from the walls, and it creates a thick blanket of fine dust on the ground. So you kick up a lot of it as you walk through, and it also kind of smells. But I was inspired by learning about how the research here is helping us understand permafrost dynamics and develop strategies for conserving Arctic environments.
Or was it a reptilian cave that been there and they found it? Let me know your thoughts below.
Antarctica, Signy Research Station. What are they researching here exactly? While you're here, have a look around. Somebody's got some explaining to do. Somebody better send some help too, it appears. Yeah, I have no idea what this is. Maybe this is where they filmed the show, The Thing. Interesting patterns. There seems to be a lot of those around here if you look close. Look all around. Get ready to get the shock of your life. The creature has arrived.
It does look weird, but what is it? It's definitely bleeding out. It's definitely decomposing, whatever it is.
Keep on in, on in, on in.
What is it doing? Yo, what was that wall? could that be the ice wall before it got froze over? Did y'all see that? Look at that. Tell me this doesn't look like an ice wall that's not froze. That is interesting. All right, guys. I think it's time we continue the story that we were watching yesterday. If you guys haven't seen it, I suggest you go watch that before you continue watching this video. And basically, the story talks about how William Morris was trying to go in past the Antarctic walls, and he assembled a team. He found a passage called Summer's Passage. He went through this passage, met with a giant red ship. Turns out the giant red ship was from another landmass beyond the ice wall called the ancestral land. So the giant red ship took William Morris's crew to the ancestral lands. They went there. They got into some type of conflict. These giants came that helped them out. Yeah, it's a crazy story. These giants came and helped them out during this conflict from. I really didn't understand who they had conflict with, but nevertheless, they had these giant orbs hovering above them while they were fighting. It turns out that they were trying to get the aid of giants. It was called the Anakim giants. Turns out that the inner ice wall is very dangerous, is what they were telling the people that came from the inner ice wall. They said they're shocked they even made it past, because those people are extremely powerful, and they ended up getting in this ship while they were dealing with conflict that was flying so fast. The normal humans that came from the inner ice wall couldn't handle it because their bodies weren't used to that type of travel. And then they explained to them that, we live to about 300 years old, and that we really don't take on responsibilities till we're around 200. So that roughly is where we ended up. All types of magical cities beyond the ice wall. They look like they were just like from the future, from the Jetsons, and they just say that they're able to get this far as humans because they're not getting reset, just like how people in the inner wall were getting reset. So it was extremely interesting story, and we're about to continue that.
Okay, now, William Morris is from the book, the Nosconfundin. That's where this whole idea came from. But he would have done the same thing. He would have left the United States, and he would have went south, and he found an opening somewhere here. They call it, I think, the Summer Gate. But he would have found an opening, and then he would have went through and found the same thing, the Ancestral Republic, which they said they were as far from the ice wall as we were, similar, just in the opposite direction. And that makes sense. They may have been right here. That's the same amount of distance to there as it is from the United States to there. So it all makes sense if you look at it from a broad perspective. So that's 1783. Now, there was the late 1800s, E.W. Barrington did the same thing, and he found an opening. When he got close enough to the opening, he even said to his captain, let's go in there. And the captain's like, no, if we go in there, it's not wide enough for us to turn around. And if we come to a wall, then we're dead. But when they got close enough to it, it sucked them in. The current sucked them in, and they went in anyway. He called it the Barrington Strait. That was in the book, E.W. Barrington's book, The Iron Republic. That's another good read. If you like the Nosconfundin books, I would definitely recommend reading that. And there's even history on that, pictures of his boat and stuff. So that was a real journey. And he said the same thing, that he went through the ice wall and found more land. But I think the overall main point is that if you're going to travel long distances between these, the best vessel you could have is a dual purpose vessel. One that can fly and one that can be submerged and go underwater. And that's what we've heard from old sea captains talking about, seeing underwater submerged objects.
What about an airship that runs off the ether? That would just coast through over all that. Am I tripping, or what do y'all think?
Fly out of the water and fly away. So the best means of travel, if you're going to do mass distances, would be a vehicle that could do both. Okay, now, William Morris is...
All right, we're going to dive into William Morris. Let's see what the fuss is about. We're diving in to William Morris.
Beyond the edge of the world lies a secret kept for millennia, a place where the laws of nature are shattered. One man's journey will uncover the unimaginable. Diocletian, a lone explorer driven by obsession.
Why did you give this to me? A map? I have to go. My father has been missing for 5 years.
You can't leave. I can't be left alone.
Okay, then come with me.
In a world beyond our own, the rules are different, He will discover the unimaginable. To survive this world, he must unlock a power hidden within, creatures unlike any we've ever seen, with abilities beyond our comprehension. In a city of giants, he will meet allies beyond his wildest dreams.
The ice wall is real?
Did you really think you knew everything, son?
Father, is that you?
They reversed my age. I'm a boy again.
How has this all been a secret for so long?
You didn't think I'd leave all this to you, did you?
Please help me get you out of here.
I owe a life debt to the people who made me young again. I cannot leave.
It's a huge world sparsely populated. But in recent times, an evil has also escaped Middle-earth and invaded this new land. To stop the mad monks who will eat you on sight, Diocletian must unlock the secrets of a forgotten world and face the truth about his own past.
You can't survive here, Diocletian. Nobody from Middle-earth can. There's no point trying to expose this place. We have control of all mass media. Our people have been attacked for 6,000 years, and over the past 100 we have had to evacuate to this place. But what's another 6,000 years to retake control?
I'm going to expose these new lands to the rest of the world.
This winter, the world you know ends beyond the ice wall. Coming soon.
Shout out to Charlie T. Griffin. That was interesting, man. We got to get the movie done ourselves because, you know, not other people are going to do it. This is by Christina Bruno the Moose 1111. Christina Bruno the Moose 4 1s. That's giving us this cliff notes on this amazing book. If I was a reader, man, I would definitely be getting this book and read it. And I might start having to become a reader because I got so many good reads I got to read now. The Apocrypha, this. And you can put the pieces together because what did it say in the Book of Jubilee or Jashir? It said that Enoch went beyond these lands and got, you know, with the, rode off on a horse on a whirlwind. So it's like, you got the knowledge. My people are destroyed from a lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6, I believe. You know, so it's like, man, it makes you think, huh? Drop your comments below, man. We're going to go through this list. We're going to get the whole story. So use this time, get you some snacks, get you something cold to drink. Kick your feet up, throw a Jack's pizza, throw a pizza in the oven. You know, I hope you got some marinara to dip your crust in like how I get down, you know, and let's lock in, man. This is dark waters for real. We be on these waters for so long, we find a new land.
Let me tell you all about it. Chapter 1, to Antarctica. The first chapter starts with him telling you his name and his story, a little bit of the background. He starts telling his story on one peaceful night after the surrender of Saratoga. All of these men that were on the boat were there telling stories under the moonlight, and several anecdotes arose after some whiskey to relax him of the anxiety post-war. So the discussion turns to James Cook's voyages and his obsession to cross the Antarctic Circle. Although it wasn't clear who was behind the funding, or even why this obsession, then Captain Butler, that was well respected, he also joined in on these stories. And he said that it was possible to cross the Antarctic Circle because there was a passage somewhere within this circle. And this passage was a connector to other worlds. And he had this conversation seriously. Without hesitation, he wasn't just telling a story. So William turns to him with another 5 or 6 that were all speechless. They all expected him to say that it was a joke, but he never said it was. He couldn't believe that a captain was literally telling him that beyond the Arctic Circle there were other worlds. And Butler commented that he knew very well, from good sources, from the highest levels, that they were researching and funding voyages to penetrate the harsh climate and barriers in the southern latitudes. And these expeditions were to find possible lands beyond the Antarctic continent. They were in a hurry to carry out these missions. Now, this story was super long and in great detail. He also said that he saw with his own 2 eyes a map that indicated the coordinates of such passage of the opening. He planned to start his voyage and leave by the end of November. His wife Lucy was not at all happy about it, but this didn't stop him. Now it was time to form a team. He decides to talk to former colleagues, but a lot of them were making up like the most ridiculous excuses not to go.
There's no way I would leave my loved ones behind. I'm like, y'all all loading up and coming with me. I got sources that's telling me this spot is good. Tell everybody who believes me to meet me here at the end of November. We're gone. I would be loading up everybody. There's no way.
But he couldn't blame them, because the idea of such a trip was not encouraging at all. But 2 of the men that were there the night that Butler was telling the story, they wanted to come. So he had 2 on board. And now the most difficult part was to convince Butler to come. He was truly the only one that had the true navigation skills, knowledge and experience on where to go. And he was also an excellent leader. And without him, they had no clue what the coordinates were either. So at this point, it all relied on Butler joining the team.
We need those coordinates. Drop in the comments if you got those coordinates. We need that. What is it called? Summer Strait? The Summer Passage? Man. But I guarantee you show up anywhere near there, you're going to be met with something serious. For entertainment purposes only.
After a few weeks, he built up his courage, contacted Butler, and invited him to join the team. And William Morris describes Butler's voice as being enthusiastic, but at the same time, he did not say yes right away. It was actually hard to convince him. So Butler initially declines the offer, which Morris doesn't understand. He's like very disappointed. And it was like this for a while. But unexpectedly on the morning of October 11th, Butler shows up at William Morris's home with a friend of his. His name was Flint. But Morris had never seen him before. And this guy had maps that Morris had never seen before. And he also carried a lot of documents that very few eyes had seen before. So Flint says that he accepts the deal, even if, based on what he believed, this was probably going to be a one-way trip. And this is when William Morris understood that they had to take this trip professionally, like a mission, and the adventure was about to begin. Morris was now totally obsessed with this exploration trip. So he has this big Navy ship, which was kind of old and needed some repairs. So he pours all of his money into fixing up this boat so it was in tip-top shape. William Morris was not actually aware of the dangers of this journey. He provided for himself the best equipment, but he still needed extra money because the repairs on the old Navy ship was above what he expected. But he saw it as an investment, so he pursued. He planned to start his voyage and leave by the end of November. His wife Lucy was not at all happy. Chapter 2 from the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. So the captain and Morris decide that their journey will start on November 14th. That is the set date. And his mysterious partner Flint was also joining the team. And the big Navy boat was also going to be ready before this date, so everything was on track. Those days were filled with anxiety and very little sleep. Lots of readings and lots of meetings with the team happened that week. Emphasized about the most wonderful and amazing adventures that they were going to possibly encounter. But reality was about to surpass anything that their imagination could have thought of. On November 12th, 2 days before the departure date, Flint shows up at Morris's home, and he was accompanied by another man that was even more mysterious than he was. The man was all dressed in black and with a very strange accent. And this guy said that it was urgent that they enter his home immediately. So everybody comes in. So Flint had a briefcase. He sets it on the table, opens it up, and in between all of this Maria de of paperwork and papers, Flint pulls out an ancient manuscript. And then he begins to recite a part of it. And this is what he read. Then by demand I subscribe in major importance, here by desire of our lords, that the doors of knowledge be closed to those who refuse to be part of our glorious path and liberties granted. The text went on for several more lines. And then at the end, Poem Regius was recited. As soon as Flint stops reading, William Morris turns to him and says, "It sounds like you're doing some initiation ritual. What's going on?" Flint turns around and says, "Exactly, comrade. Precisely those who did not pass this initiation. We are the marginalized." Morris demanded that Flint explain exactly what was going on. He was getting kind of nervous now. William wanted to know what this all meant and what did it have to do with their voyage. So Flint says, "Look, I'm going to explain it to you a little bit." And he tells Morris that this manuscript belongs to the custodians, or as we call them, also known as the sun gods. And he told him that these sun gods found out about their trip. They found out about the trip because Butler snitched on them. He says the high spheres are aware of everything and they are not happy about this. And this manuscript explains how they will not let leave anyone, even by demand of the lords. Morris is thinking that the situation could not get any worse. Clearly already hard enough with all the risks of the harsh climate. So with all the natural events that could possibly happen, now they had to keep into consideration these unknown enemies. Who are these custodians? So Flint starts walking around in circles. He doesn't know what to say. And this is when his mysterious friend opens his mouth for the very first time. He starts to say how these custodians are not happy about our trip. That this was the only thing that he was allowed to tell them. That we should all cancel the trip. He said that it wasn't worth risking our lives, but he had a threatening tone. And this is when William Morris starts to get triggered, and he tells both of them to leave his house immediately. So now Morris wants to speak with Butler and see what the hell is going on. But that day, and for the next days, Butler did not answer. He simply didn't respond to any of the attempts that William made to contact him. So William gathers an emergency team. He said that the situation was so dark and sinister, but that an inner force pushed him to continue. The passage to the other land was becoming even. Chapter 2 from the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. Chapter 2, The Custodians. Let's find out who these custodians and keep us entrapped in our domed lands are. We left off where William Morris was trying to contact Captain Butler to tell him about his unexpected visit by these strange people. Strange man that had looked at him defiantly, telling them that they needed to cancel this voyage with a threatening tone, and all at the same time while reciting something that sounded like a ritual initiation of some kind. William gathers an emergency team to see how they can continue this voyage. He wanted to give up almost, but an inner force pushed him. This passage to these other lands was getting closer. More real, but also more dangerous. Morris meets with the entire team. Butler was not there, and for weeks no one had heard from him or knew where he was. Morris tells his team about the sequence of events that happened, about the manuscript, about the custodians, about Butler being missing for about 2 weeks. Then a man named Walter said that he actually had heard about the custodians before. He wasn't really sure who they were, but it sounded like a secret organization. The situation was not encouraging. Butler was still missing, didn't show up for weeks, and at this point, the situation was not at all encouraging. With Butler missing, the plan seemed impossible. And also there was this risk with this unknown organization called the Custodians. The plan now was to postpone the trip until they could find Butler. November 14th, when everybody had canceled the trip, someone knocked on William Morris's door. And to his grand surprise, it was Captain Butler. Butler brought provisions, maps, and everything necessary to leave. Then he turns to William Morris as nothing had happened, like if it was all okay that he had ratted everyone out to these custodians, and said, "Come on, guys, it's time to leave." William repeatedly asked him where he had been, or where he had gone, and wanted to know more about all these strange events that happened in the past 2 days. Captain Butler looks at him very calmly and says, "It was to be expected." He said he had to hide for security, and also to protect all of the documentation he had. And the most important of these things was the map. He was hiding the map. He started unfolding this map in his living room, and Morris says it was huge. He kept unfolding, unfolding, and unfolding. There was a land he had never seen before. And that's when Captain Butler gave the order to assemble the team. They had to leave today. Morris asked Butler if he knew the custodians personally, and Butler said, "The story is not what you've been told." He said, "William, the creators of the pyramids are also who we call the custodians." Butler said that they were really not okay with them crossing the poles at all, and that they found out these things via Flint. At the same time, Flint blamed Butler. So since Flint was the one that betrayed them, he said, "This is why we have to leave today. It cannot be another day." Because they apparently knew everything already, thanks to Flint. So he promised to give more details about this story once they had sailed, but it was fundamental that they leave today. So William Morris hurries to gather the entire team, and on November 14th, they leave the port of Charleston. And they only had a few stops before reaching the areas of the frozen South. Butler shouted William Morris's name and told him to immediately come on deck. A passage had just opened behind the giant walls of ice. The happiness that devoured these men was unexplainable. Butler did not hesitate for a second, and right away shot in the direction of the opening. The captain seemed to know what he was doing, driving the boat parallel to the promontory. And then a kind of current took them all the way inside. Without even being able to realize it, they were being dragged by this enormous force now. Fear paralyzed the crew. The ship was brushing its edges all along the two ice walls. The panic of the ice wall crushing the ship lasted 3 or 4 minutes, but they describe it as feeling like it was never ending. Suddenly now they were sailing on this current, and calm seemed to invade their surroundings. Cold, but not overwhelming cold, so right away we have switched climate. The narrow passage was now opening more and more. It was leading them to an open sea. William Morris said he did not believe his eyes. He was seeing this, but at the same time couldn't believe it. Behind the ice walls, there was an entire other ocean. The captain shouted, "We made it! We made it!" They all celebrated with surprise and amazement. They were in waters that only few had ever been before. Or so they thought at that moment. The dark waters began to clear now. The ice walls were still visible, but they were being lost in the distance. William Morris gathered his team under the command of Captain Butler, who had summoned them all with some seriousness. He was now going to make an important announcement. He was going to tell them about the real history behind the known Earthlands. and about humanity and its past. And in that moment, a colossal-sized craft appeared. This massive ship was directly going towards them. The men that were on top, seeing what was going on, ran down shouting, scared, that something gigantic was coming directly towards them. Everyone was panicking, but Butler ordered them to remain calm. And even though he remained calm, he seemed a little bit nervous. Who would be coming towards us in this gigantic craft, he wondered. This gigantic ship reached them. It was a reddish ship, and the more it got closer, the more it was even larger than what they expected. It had a blue flag with a white circle in the middle. Morris could not believe that he had just left the ice walls behind him, and now that he was seeing these people, that they didn't know who they were. This was a force that would stop them. So at this point, they are still in very dark waters. That means that it's very deep. They have an unidentified gigantic ship going straight towards them. Huge defeating sound blast into the air. They are in this new, mysterious, uncharted open ocean, and this gigantic red ship is heading towards them, a size that we have never seen in our lands. The waters were still very deep, and they describe how there was this weird climate of both hot and cold at the same time. Once the gigantic ship reached them, they saw that it had a blue flag with a white circle in the middle, a flag that they had never seen before. Screeching sound filled the air. They could hardly stand it. They could describe it as unbearable. It was some kind of a mega horn. Then a voice with a perfect English accent said, "Dear visitors from the walled lands, some of our men will come down and approach your boat. Please remain calm." William Morris was very frightened at this message. There was no way for them to escape. Their ship was gigantic. It looked like something out of a fictional tale, he describes it. But Butler reassured him that based on his knowledge, that everything was going to be okay. He knew that something like this could happen, and he told everyone to stay calm and welcome this visitor in a very kind way. These men were now making their way to Morris's ship. They had white suits. They had several emblems on them that stood out. At this point, they helped these men up, and everyone was shaking hands nicely. One of them introduced themselves as the captain and wanted to know what they were doing in these seas and why they were navigating there. Butler speaks up and explains how they're navigating around the Antarctic Circle, and that a current brought them there to this open sea of theirs. He called it the other side, and that they were there to investigate these other areas. William Morris noticed that Butler and these other men were getting along. Their captain turned to the other two men with him, and he looked amazed. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. People from the other side of the ice wall had just penetrated it and gone beyond. They all looked at each other and commented between them that it had been a very, very long time since anything like this had happened. And their captain says to Butler that they were very, very sorry that their visit seemed to be unwelcomed, that it was super important to follow rigorously the directions that the other captain had given them. The men wanted to know if now Captain Butler was finally going to tell them the things that he had promised he was going to tell them. But Butler hesitated again and said not yet. It was almost as if he had changed his mind to inform the men of what he knew. Butler mentioned that after meeting these people, now things had changed. Maybe his perspective, his view had changed. He was very happy that they ran into these people and now that they could safely travel to the Ancestral Republic. He said that it would have not been the same if another boat had found them first. He said, let us remember that these are very powerful people that we left behind. Very powerful people that did not want us sailing these waters, or knowing all of this at all. He says, let's wait until we get to the Ancestral Republic, and then maybe we will be able to explain things better. They all wanted to know more about the situation. Butler said, although we have already crossed the ice walls, the journey has just begun. It's time to understand that we are in a war zone. The last sentence left the men speechless. War zone? What do you mean? What war zone is this? And Butler gives him a brief response. Everything will become more clear as soon as we anchor. The temperatures had now changed quite a bit the farther they got away from the ice walls. The climate becomes temperate, indicating that they were arriving to these lands. And birds of various types began to be spotted the closer they got there. He had the feeling that they were making history. Next episode, Chapter 5, The Great Reset. The Great Human Reset. Are you ready to find out what the Great Reset's all about? Chapter 5 of the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. The Human Reset. Destination, the Ancestral Republic. The team was now in voyage to the Ancestral Republic, following the directions of the captain from the Ancestral Republic Navy ship that stopped them. The night was very clear, and the sailors could see from a distance. The group was stupefied by the beauty of this giant and silent city. They describe it as like looking at an electrical city from the book of Thomas Brown. They were eager to arrive and not remain on the boat anymore because they were very uneasy about what the other captain had told them about there being a war zone, that they might not be safe. So the priority right now was to get to land, to get to the Ancestral Republic. So they're at the port of what looks like a large and modern city. And not even a couple of minutes go by that more agents dressed just like the other guys on the ship arrived to welcome them. And they were greeted. The head agent said, "Welcome to the Ancestral Republic. We are very happy of your visit to our lands. It's almost unthinkable. We were advised of your arrival, but we really didn't believe it until we saw you guys." Captain Butler thanks them on behalf of the entire boat and then introduces William Morris as the owner of the ship. William Morris said that it was an honor to be there. The entire team was still dumbfounded because they couldn't believe that beyond the Antarctic ice wall, that there were other cultures, that there were other lands. It was just impossible to set in. And they had so many questions. But the agent told them that right now it was urgent for them to go meet the president. Now Morris is describing a vehicle that they took to go meet this president that they had never seen before. The system of illumination was these electrical lanterns. There were no noises of horses or carriages. It was a very silent city, whimsical to say the least. They are describing the clothes that the other people are wearing as very colorful and totally different. And they also had these luminous devices that they were holding that would show images and voices. I think they're describing cell phones or little portable computers. And remember, this is after the Revolutionary War, so these guys had never seen this technology. It would be like someone from the past visiting us today. They finally arrived to this immense building, and each room was connected to the other. William Morris decides to touch the wall while he's going from room to room, and he said that it was cold like marble. Then there are some stairs. He becomes dizzy. Then they finally arrive to a room with all of these different chairs and seatings, and the agent tells him to wait there. And Morris says that he could have waited there forever because the comfort of these seats was something that he had never experienced before. After a while, a man with a mustache comes out and addresses Morris and says, "Are you William Morris from the United States of America?" And Morris says, "Yes." And the man says, "My name is Fael. I am so sorry you have arrived at these times that we are going through now. If you had come at any other time, the situation would have been so much better and different." Morris said that he had so many questions, but he was living in a state of confusion at the moment, and he couldn't get a single word out. And Fael continues his story, and he tries to explain how there is this war that before was far away, but now it also involves them here at the Ancestral Republic. And although Morris didn't really quite understand the situation, he kept on nodding and saying yes, yes, as if he did, because he wanted to hear more of the story. And maybe after that, he could understand what was going on. Fael, with all seriousness, looks at Morris and says, I don't think you fully understand. We are part of what you would call the old humanity. I mean, we were not part of the last reboot. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what the reboot process is? There are many humanities in different times, as well as there are many resets and many reboots. And this happens every certain amount of time that has already been stipulated. And if it's done before that date, it's for external reasons. And he says, at least for now, this is how it has always happened. Then he reveals some shocking information explaining how natural disasters are also part of this manipulation to reboot humanity. The navigator who crossed the ice walls, William Morris, is now speaking with the president of the Ancestral Republic, Fael. And he's trying to explain to Morris how they are part of the old humanity, the humanity before the last great reset. Obviously, William Morris had no idea what this all meant, so he tried to break it down for him. Morris had every desire to tell him that he understood, but the truth is that he was totally lost. There were many humanities in different times, as well as there were many reboots and resets. This happens every certain time already stipulated, or it is done before that date for external reasons. I mean in a way intentionally created before reaching that time. As far as we know here in this reality, it always happens this way, since the natural way is also carried out by manipulating the environment where you come from. So the reboot is a process they carry out in their lands.
It sounds like heart, man. Wow.
To extinguish all of humanity that are in those specific areas. Again, this is a book. It is not factual. And every time they do this, they only leave the population of all of the newborn babies. This way, those babies will repopulate those areas. And this process is carried out over and over and over again. Woof! I wouldn't want to live in this book, right? So when the ruling class of elites that live beyond the ice wall and the ruling class that live within our ice wall that are aware of the other elites, when someone gets out of control or the situation is out of control, then that is a justification for a reboot. A reboot can be done in many ways. It could be done with natural disasters, calamities, floods, viruses, wars, plagues, and they even said that asteroids are actually bombs that are sent on purpose. So it doesn't really matter how. The fact that we've escaped before is reason enough for them to press that reset button. So Fael looks at William Morris and he says, do you understand, William? William's head was spinning to the point that he felt so dizzy that he thought that he was going to just fall over. And although William Morris understood what President Fael was telling him, he could not accept that the lands where he was born had all this situation going on and he was never aware. The President Fael then explains that even although they are not in this conflict directly, no one is out of this conflict. Then he apologizes to Morris and says that he's very sorry, but that this is all the time he had, and now he had to urgently go do something else, and leaves. Morris is now left alone with the agent in the room, and the agent himself was feeling bad for Morris. He could see the pain in his face. The fact that Morris understood what was going on back in his lands, it was very heartbreaking for him. Now Morris returns to the boat to tell the others everything that he had discovered, but Captain Butler was not there. Morris gathers his team together and tells him everything that President Fael had told him. He told him the situation, even though it was very little what he understood, and the group was even more stunned than he was and understood even less. The men were clearly all in a state of crisis now. So Morris asks, where did Butler go? And the men tell him that Butler left the ship as soon as he left to go meet the president.
but no one knew where he was. So now again, here we are. Butler had disappeared, and he was in unknown lands. William was silent, pensive, all of this going around in his head. The old humanity, the intentional death of populations. Who could carry out these plans? And why the intention of all of it? And while he was contemplating on this, a huge sound came from the sky. It was an explosion. The earth shook and everybody laid on the ground immediately. Even the water was shaking and the ship. The ship itself seemed as if it was made out of paper. Chapter 6 from the book The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. The Anakim Giants from the South. After William Morris speaks with Fayal, the president from the Ancestral Republic, he returns to his ship. He is confused. He is in disbelief. He wants to tell his crew members everything that he learned. And it's at this point that he realizes Captain Butler is not on the ship. The men tell him that he had just left after Morris had gone to speak with Fayal, the president, and has not yet returned. So again, we are missing Butler, just like in the beginning of the story. No one knows where he is. And this is when a huge explosion happens in the sky. Morris explains how they were taken to the ground by the earth shaking, the waters were shaking, the ship was shaking. He describes the ship as seeming to be made out of paper. He said that everything exploded around them. Our eyes were wide open, but we had no understanding of what was happening around us. We ran to the deck and saw the worst landscape that anyone could ever see. Not even in their times of war had they seen. They said everything was literally destroyed. People were screaming in the streets and an alarm sound was activated. Yet they couldn't tell from where it was coming from. The only thing they knew is that it could be heard throughout the entire city. This is when a voice tried to calm people down. But unfortunately, it was too late. They had reached the Ancestral Republic. In the next episode, I'll tell you all about the Anakim giants from the lands of the South.
Oh my God. This story is getting crazy. You got giants coming. They made it beyond the wall. And it makes sense that, there'll be conflict beyond the wall because they probably already knew. Admiral Byrd probably found out back in the day. Like, oh, there's other land out there, huh? For entertainment purposes only. Oh, there's other land out there, huh? I want that. And you didn't hear Operation Ice Climb. That's a new one. We had Operation Fishbowl, Operation High Jump, Operation Starfish. You didn't hear about Operation Ice Jump, where they try to take over. That's all they do is take over and conquer. So it makes sense. For entertainment purposes only. We gotta keep hearing this, y'all. I know it's the same person and normally I switch it up, but you cannot tell me this isn't interesting. I want to hear it.
You are going to be really happy to know that the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls, and the book, The One World Tartarians, are validating themselves. And they're not even closely, even remotely written by similar people. Two totally different things. But it's really cool. Let me tell you all about it. Chapter 6, The Anakim Giants of the South. In the last episode, we left off after William Morris and his team and everything surrounding them was turned to dust and rubble, literally like the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah. And they could hear enemy crossfires in the distance as well. William Morris said that everything was getting out of control in like minutes. And in the sky, thousands of spheres with red lights showed up. Morris wasn't sure if these spheres were from the Republic or if they were the enemies of the Republic. But it almost seems as if like they were recording what was happening. It sounds a little bit like drones, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Morris tells how he wanted to help the people and everything that they saw, but at the same time, they needed to get that boat and get out of there. And the voice that they heard, like on the megaphones before, that was trying to calm everybody down, now was telling everyone to immediately go to the presidential building. Now, this is when Morris realizes something really, really weird about the sun and the moon. He said that he was in anguish and in fear and just looking at the sky for mercy. The sky was a furious red tone, and for some reason, he said that when he was looking at the sun, it was darkened. It didn't hurt his eyes. He could look directly at it. I could observe that the sun's glow did not burn my sight. It had a dark tone, and what I thought was the moon stood out in this distance in a totally black color, as in the middle of an eclipse. He thought then that it was the strangest sky. We certainly had never seen the sun and the moon behave this way in our known lands. Then add on all of these thousands of spheres that were going around like eyeballs, looking and watching everyone. Morris wanted to know where these spheres came from and who sent them, because as much as he was observing them, their maneuvers were not that of any attack or anything. It just looked like a whole bunch of spying eyes. Morris now lost sight of all of his crew members. He says that everybody was vanished. He couldn't recognize anyone. He was there standing at the presidential building, as that voice had said, and all of the other people were looking at him with suspicion. Of course, he was the newcomer now. He didn't know what to do because as a member of the Continental Navy, he felt an obligation towards his men to help them and look for them, but he couldn't see anyone. He had no idea where anyone was. Morris is desperately trying to find someone high in command because he wants to offer his services. He doesn't want to be just a bystander now. He feels attached to this ancestral republic, even though he's never been there before. He says he felt like they were his land also. In the distance, Morris catches President Fayed. He sees him, and guess what? He's talking with Captain Butler, that had previously gone missing since he had talked to the president. Morris calls out to him, and Captain Butler gives him a Navy salute from far away. And he says that Butler looked very, very depressed. Morris gets close to President Fayed, and then he sees that he's yelling at his luminous device, which again sounds like a phone or a little computer. He said that from this phone there was a repeated constant message, and the following was clearly heard. "We are requesting support from the Anakim. We have no choice, Fayed. This was a planned attack to destroy a civilian and secure area. There is no turning back." Butler then looks at Morris with the typical look of leadership, reinforcing what he just heard, meaning he was saying, yes, you heard that correctly. Morris asks Butler in a very low tone of voice, and he says, "Did I hear correctly? Are they mentioning giants?" And Butler nodded his head, "Yes, you did. They are giant warriors from the south." Fayed heard what Butler and Morris were talking about, and he went closer and he said, "I'll tell you more. Not only are they giant warriors, but they are our saviors. They are the ones that led us to these lands before the last reset." The president then leaves with the 3 men that accompanied him. He goes into his office. Then Butler...
Don't tell me this is Attack on Titan now. Oh my God. Beyond the ice walls? Now we got giants? If you guys seen Attack on Titan, you know where this is going.
Tells Morris to come with him. And they were running through with all of these agents going back and forth. Everyone feared that there was going to be another attack. Now Captain Butler tells Morris that they need to hurry up back to the ship because they're going to go to their next destination. And Morris had so many questions because he didn't even know if his boat was still outside since they kept on hearing explosions coming from the outside. Captain Butler said that this was not exactly Fayed's plans, but that the moment requested it, it required it. Now they were looking for the rest of the team in a hurry. The plan now was to gather their team and now set sail for the Anakim lands. And this is when Butler tells Morris that he's very sorry that he couldn't tell him sooner, but he said, "I have ancestral blood running through my veins." Some of you are going to be really happy to know that the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls, and the book, Chapter 7 of the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls, In the last episode, we discovered about the Anakim giants, but they're not to be confused with the Annunaki. They are a different race. The Anakim giants in these books are the guys that saved that fraction of humanity that then afterwards became the Ancestral Republic. They saved the humans at the last reset, so they're not the bad guys. There are a lot of speculation going around about the Anakim giants. Some think that they are the same as the Anunnaki. While they are not, they're a totally different race. And then other people are thinking that they were bad, but they're absolutely not. They are the ones that saved humanity. There was this story going around saying that the Anakim giants were spotted on Earth and that they were taken out. Hooray, we did it. No hooray, because technically they are the saviors. So no booing the Anakim giants. Last episode, we left off that there had just been this massive explosion at the Ancestral Republic. William Morris had lost sight of all of his team members. He finds Butler that was speaking with the president, and the president is on the phone talking about the Anakim giants. And William Morris is like, did I just hear correctly? Giants? And Butler nods his head saying, yes, you heard correctly. Captain Butler also admits that he is from the Ancestral Republic. And I think that he was like doing espionage in the known lands, because originally he said he is from there, that these are his brothers and sisters that were attacked. Now remember the drone eyeballs, those round spheres that were flying around? Morris says that he looks up at the sky and there are these huge formations with thousands and thousands of blue birds. At this point, they need to evacuate and everyone is running. They're running on ships, they're running on boats. The entire Ancestral Republic is being evacuated. And this is when Butler says to Morris, do you want to stop looking at the sky? Relax. The Iron Birds are our friends. They are defeating the enemy. In fact, these Iron Birds were attacking the spheres and sending them away. So the spheres were part of the bad guys. So Captain Butler, Morris, and the team arrive at their supposed destination. There were many agents waiting for Butler, and they all seemed to be very relieved that he was okay. They reproached them for their delay. Then they waited for a few minutes, and this is when they were taken and put on a silver platform, and they were being brought to the top of someplace. Morris says that there was a contradictory view because everything was magnificent and so beautiful, but at the same time, it was between fire, death, and desolation. They get to the top of this place and they see that on the other side there is this huge modern city with structures never seen before. It was an absolute representation of prosperity. In the sky, the Iron Blues, the birds, were still fighting against the spheres. Now that they are at the top floor, the agents greet them and tell them that they are going to have the most unique experience. They are going to touch the clouds. The ships that they were about to take were nothing of what they could have possibly imagined. This structure was huge, and it all seemed to be made out of one piece. And there were routes in the skies, leading to different places and then back again. It was like a skyway. And these iron structures would get lost in the horizon because they would go so far that your naked eye could not see the end of them. One of the agents told them that all of these structures were connecting all of the big cities. It was a travel method for them. Morris was told to prepare himself because he was about to experience something that he would never forget. A dark blue ship was awaiting for them and had one side that opened. Morris sits next to Butler in these rows of 4 seats. He says that the inside looked even bigger than what it looked like from the outside. The ship takes off. And all of a sudden, Morris and his team start feeling dizzy and some are passing out. They're fainting. He said that it was like being ejected from an enormous cannon. It was just unbearable if you're not used to it. At times they would take long tunnels. And when everything would go dark in the tunnels, that is when Morris said that they felt like passing out. But after 20 minutes, they were now traveling smoothly. While they're traveling, they saw these small islands that looked like paradise. In fact, nearby, there were the islands of Eden. Morris was captivated by his surroundings, but at the same time, he needed to pay attention to what Butler was saying to the other agents because they were all talking about strategies. And at a certain point, he heard that they were poisoning the air, and he's like, what? What do you mean poisoning the air? Morris describes their conversation as being in code almost. And when Captain Butler noticed that Morris was like looking at him confused, this is when Butler beat him to the punch and explained everything. He says, they poison the air. How can I explain this? The human that is born in their lands gets sick quickly due to the work that the custodians do. This disease is usually implanted in the first humans, or to better say, the babies left to repopulate. They do this to the first and sometimes the second generation.
They said they seen the Garden of Eden while on the ship. This story is crazy.
Are you ready to find out more about the Ancestral Republic? This is the end of Chapter 7, the beginning of Chapter 8 of the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. The people in the Ancestral Republic that are simply us humans before the last great reset that were saved by the Anakim giants and brought to these safe lands where they created the Ancestral Republic. So basically they are just like us, but without the modifications of the last great reset. And this is one of my favorite parts of the book. The conversation is between William Morris and Captain Butler. William asks Captain Butler, what does it mean that we have shortened lifespans? Butler explains that the people in the Ancestral Republic live 3 times longer than us in the known lands, because there is no such modification in their bodies. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, if you want to catch up, there's a playlist, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Butler explains that to achieve their total control, the custodians need to shorten our lifespan. Now, why? Butler explains that this disease makes our bodies age rapidly, and the custodians prefer it this way because long longevity brought problems previously. But with age also comes knowledge, and at this point you have more time to analyze the situation and try to resolve it. Butler explains how they modified humans and molded them for their usefulness. This way they could avoid any conflict. The idea is to always fulfill the cycle called natural. And obviously that comes naturally with the next reset. And Butler explains to Morris how they recently tried to do another one of these cycles to the Ancestral Republic people, saying they first want to shorten our lifespan to achieve their control. William Morris and his crew couldn't believe their ears. Everyone was absolutely outraged at hearing this. How could they do this? It was just a little bit too much information. It sounded unreal. Custodians were shortening our lives and making us miserable. And Morris says, I understood then that there was no freedom of any form in the known lands. How could we free our people from this perverse power? And how could you declare war on an enemy of which everyone was unaware of? And what was the human like without this control over them? What could we possibly have achieved if we had longer lifespans? The answer was right in front of them, looking at the Ancestral Republic and all of its prosperity. That is what humans could have achieved in the known lands if they didn't have this custodial interruption. You see, in the Ancestral Republic, you remained a child without any thoughts or worries until the age of 240, 250. Insane, right? I know. So just imagine how wise an elder from the Ancestral Republic could be. Without the cursed custodial control, in the next episode, Morris and his team arrive to the capital called Arca. Are you ready to find out more about the Ancestral Republic?
Man, this is completely blowing my mind. I'm seeing so many correlations, and it lines up. They said, look at what we can achieve. We're not worried about paying rent and working our lives away. We're just living. Jeez, for entertainment purposes only, this is just a story. But let me know what you guys think below. I'm going to try to get as far as I can on this, guys.
Ice walls. Chapter 8, Human Greatness. William Morris and the crew are on their way to the capital, El Arca. Morris, Captain Butler, and the entire crew arrive in this luminous city. Morris said that he would never have even been able to imagine such a city. It was just so surreal. People filled the public spaces, restaurants, and walkways. He describes them as almost looking like they're going to collide, but they never do. Everyone moves in a perfect synchronicity almost. Captain Butler is leading the way. In the sky, there are these huge transparent spheres that go from one way to the other. And typically it carries one person, but on some occasions they were even seeing two. And these were moving transparent spheres that would float in the air. I guess that this is the place where everything actually became like the Jetsons. Like when we were kids, we were waiting finally for the year 2020 for the Jetsons reality to be all around us. And yet, besides cell phones, computers, Teslas, I don't know, things like that, nothing ever really changed. Like we're still using the same furniture, the same kind of cars. It's weird, since everyone expected us to be a lot more evolved by now. So the first thing they see are these spheres being driven by people, strange balloons that floated across the sky. The weird thing about the citizens of El Arca is that even though a few miles away there was this huge war that just started and was taking place, they weren't affected by it. They were totally acting normal with nonchalance, like continuing their everyday life. Now in the capital, El Arca, Morris tells us that they don't speak English. See, there were a lot of comments that wanted to know why they spoke perfect English in the Ancestral Republic. Well, here in El Arca, they do not. It's actually a foreign language, a language they had never heard before. In fact, Morris makes reference that if they had lost sight of Butler, they wouldn't even know how to communicate with these people because of this weird language that was impossible to decipher and like none other he had ever heard. He asked himself, was this the native language? A time before time? What if it was the first spoken language? Remember, in this book, the situation is that the people from the known lands had been subjected to a great reset and forgot all of their real history. The team was very united. This fantastic new adventure, these new worlds that no one had any idea about, was bringing the team closer. Everyone was very excited to meet these Anakim giants. They could not believe that they really existed. Morris was afraid that this attack on the Ancestral Republic was their fault. Was this the punishment because they had left the known lands? The entire team threw themselves into all of these theories and trying to figure out what it all meant. Of course, they had not received all of the information they needed. They were starting to think that the ice walls were artificial. Another big question that they had were the custodians other humans? Are they another race? New races, just like the giants. So far, they had new races, giants, artificial walls. They began to dig so deep into these theories that they sounded borderline ridiculous. The team reunites with Captain Butler, and Captain Butler tells them that they're going to take a boat now and points in the direction of a harbor at a boat that looks just like the huge, gigantic red one that approached them in the beginning as soon as they had crossed the ice walls. Everything was ready for them to leave for the Anakim lands, but first they were going to make a stop at a place called the Captain's Land. They get onto the ship and they said that every room had the decor of like a different era, but an era that was unknown. How many eras were there that the known land people were not privy to, had no clue? Everything was so difficult to understand. And the technology that they were seeing was advanced light years compared to ours. They were told that the ship they were on could practically take care of itself. It was very silent, and from the inside, you could not even hear the water on the outside. Then Morris notices that the waters outside were calm, but calm in a way that it was stable. And this was going on for the entire trip. Their waters didn't move like ours. Now he's obsessed with figuring out why the waters don't move like ours. And this is when he started to think about the moon that was 3 times brighter than how we see it from the known lands. He said that the sun was a totally different color than ours, and that there was also another sphere that was bluish black in the sky. Nevertheless, this other sphere was also part of the firmament. The origin of the human being and the revealing book of Shiki about the other worlds. Let's see what it's all about. The journey to the shifting islands of Thoth went without any major inconvenience. The only strange and remarkable thing was that there was no night. The day barely faded in the horizon. But the first night that Morris and his team were there, a full and clear moon appeared in the firmament. And they said they barely noticed the transition. They describe it as an eternal sunset of fire in the distance. He says that it was hard to fall asleep because of this fact that there was never night. And everyone was super excited about meeting these giants. They couldn't wait. So after this quick stop at the lands of Thoth, where there was no night, they arrive at the Anakim lands. And everybody is super excited about the giants, of course. And as soon as they descended, a man with a red long beard appeared. He was with a woman with a beautiful face and long blonde hair. The captain then introduced everyone, and there was kind of a disappointment because yes, these people were tall, but not more than 2.5 meters. Example, in America, I am 5'6.5". In Italy, I'm 1.67 meters. So someone that is 2.5 meters is, yes, he's super tall. Stupefied to step on the lands of the giants, everyone shakes hand, and then they follow them. The city was not so silent, and that was more like a rural area. And the language they spoke there was absolutely undecipherable to the crew. Captain Butler also couldn't speak it, but the woman who introduced herself as Shaky, she could speak it. She seemed to be fluent in it. Now they seemed to be in the center of this village, of this remote island, this ocean that was totally unknown to them. Shiki invites them in, and their houses were like domes, all in different sizes. Nevertheless, they were all domes. And they also saw huge white towers that had domes on the top of them. And then at the top of these towers with the dome, there were giants inside that were looking around monitoring. William Morris says that his perspective, like his imagination, thinking of giants, that they were these semi-clothed barbarians. But in reality, this race was very advanced and seemed to come out of some parallel universe. Their attire was colorful and adjusted to their large bodies. Here we are at the good part. They approach the central area, and he says that there were giants, but of all different statures and heights. There were the lesser giants and the majestic giants. They were not all the same height, and this was fascinating to them, of course. Butler told us that this race of giants was so important for us to know our past, since there was in them ancestral human blood and pure giant blood from the ancient lands of Anak. And they promised that later they would tell us our history of our own race, how the ancient and pure giants joined the ancestral humans to bring forth one of the most powerful forces that ever existed. This all happened in the known lands to confront the custodians. And I'll tell you all about it in the next episode.
Custodians, man. They could be the Rothschilds or something. I have no idea. For entertainment.
The navigator crossed the ice wall. Are you ready to hear how the ancient and pure giants joined the ancestral humans to bring forth one of the most powerful forces that ever existed to fight against the custodians? known as the Great Tartary, which could have changed the course of our history forever. This is Chapter 9 of the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. In the previous episode, we got to the part where we found out that these ancient giants were our allies against the custodians. For all intents and purposes, this is a story in a book. And I'm not saying it's factual, but we also don't know. Our known lands used to be called the Great Tartary. And if the war had gone as we planned, it would have changed the course of our history forever. In any case, it marked a before and after, generating radical changes in our known lands. But it created changes in our surrounding worlds as well. Shiki, the beautiful giant, approached Captain Butler and William Morris while they were having this conversation. Shiki was holding a huge book, and she told Morris that this was going to help him understand our true history, our true origins, and also to understand the history of our races. As soon as Morris opened the book, he noticed several maps, and she made a special note here on our lands called the Known Lands. In this book, he found our history, everything there was to know, the races, the languages. It was very interesting to him. And here we have Morris that thought that nothing could surprise him or astonish him any more than what he had already seen. But yet, here we were again, absolutely shocked at the things that he was reading. So Shiki tells him that she recommends that he not take it all in all at once, because it's a lot. Morris tells us that there are, to their knowledge, another 178 worlds that we don't know about. Then Captain Butler adds that yes, they have this 178 other worlds, but that doesn't even count all the islands around each world and behind them. So Shiki is with Morris and Butler, and she's trying to explain everything that she can. And all of a sudden, she comes to the part where there are the Annunaki lands. And they said that her facial expression changed. The Annunaki are also in the flat earth, ice wall theory, and Tartarian books. But they're not extraterrestrials from outer space. They are from other lands called the Annunaki land, outside of our known lands. And she tells them the story on how the Annunaki have always been hostile towards the humans of the known lands. They are also bound by a treaty with the custodians. William Morris says that everything was culminating to the final moment where he would know our true origins. Where did the beginning of human life start? The past of the giants, or giant humans, was hidden forever. Their technology and bones were as sadly hidden and forgotten as the greatness of their history. And new discoveries of giants will be today and in the future simply ridiculed. Some even intermingled with beasts that never inhabited these lands, the eternal known lands, where their oceans are stained with ancestral blood, which could have changed everything. The custodians made a pact. Never the humans of the new reset could know that a force was possible to defeat his invisible colonizer. He would not even know this time that there was a force from the above that was controlling these lands. Is it possible to escape into your spiritual freedom? Morris couldn't understand how it was possible for them to condition our minds so much. For a second, he questioned if the story was real. But then again, he said, how can I question the reality of the situation when I'm in it? He was literally living with the same giant humans of the story. And the team says, how can we doubt this story when we are in the lands behind the ice walls that we didn't even know existed? Are you ready to hear how the ancient and pure giants? Are you ready to learn more about the lands beyond the ice walls? Chapter 10, The Domes, Learning About the Worlds Behind the Ice Walls, from the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. William Morris and Captain Butler come out of the domes where they were staying, and they notice that the temperature was so stable that it seemed regulated. There were fruits there, of all kinds, that were never seen in our known lands. And there was vegetation in the distance that had colors that they had never seen. And they speak of how Shiki, the beautiful giant, was captivating all of the crew members. Everyone was fascinated by her. Now Shiki would tell them more information that was in her famous huge book that talked about our real true history. She talked to them already about the treaty between the Anunnaki and the custodians. What were they looking for with that treaty? Morris dared to ask. Shiki turns to Morris and says, "You have to understand, William, that the custodians and Anunnaki have something in common, in which unites them in their technology also. Their technology is primarily based on armaments and military development because they are colonizers from birth. When they arrive at certain circles, they look for ways to penetrate it to look for certain benefits for themselves. They study the life found there, and if it serves them, they want to own it. And best case scenario, they would find agreements for their benefit in its development. They sometimes implant seeds in certain races. The custodians are also known for their advanced ships and for being among the few that are aware that there are 178 worlds or circled environments around the known lands." Here Morris asks, domes, what does that mean? What does it mean that it's a domed land, that we are in domed lands? And she responds, "William, each circle is divided by one or several different domes, depending on what encompasses that circle. This dome is a kind of membrane that divides the system." And this information was very advanced for William Morris and from the times he came from. And she asks him if he's ever heard of the cellular theory. These circles could roughly compare to them, to what we call a cell and its plasma membrane. Are you ready to learn more about the lands beyond the ice walls?
It sounds like they have multiple firmaments. Like each cell membrane could be a firmament for each particular world. That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting here. Guys, I don't know if you're a lip reader, but I'm telling you, they literally muted this video. TikTok muted this entire video when she's going into detail about the cell membranes of the 180 different worlds outside of there and how they're unpenetrable and they like heal themselves like membranes. If you like, say if you try to break into another, like Operation Starfish or something, like say if you try to break a membrane, like attack the firmament, it heals itself like a cell membrane, and you have to have certain technology to get past these membranes. That's what I think she's covering in this video. I wish we could hear this, trust me, but that's what the comments, I read through all the comments, and that's what someone's saying. It's saying there is one giant unpenetrable dome membrane. I'm assuming it can repair and self-repair like a cell if you damage it, but within that dome, there are many biomes with unique suns and moons. I'm assuming from the stories, this is what's being said. The Annunaki books or Anunnaki books speak about them damaging their ship when trying to get in the Middle Earth, known lands, and using darker skinned humans because they had protection against the yellow sun and known lands and could work the farm and materials needed to fix their tech. Damn. They're definitely hiding something. For them to mute this? Let me know y'all thoughts below what they're saying. Somebody's got to read this book and they got to break it down for us because they literally muted this entire video. Let's see if they muted the next one.
Navigator who crossed the ice walls. The domes, the learning of the worlds beyond the ice walls. In this chapter, they explain about the giants, why there aren't any more giants anymore, and how to travel between lands beyond our ice wall. Please remember that this is a fictional book and not factual, but that many do believe in this, and so we should be respectful. The past of the giants, or giant humans, was hidden forever. Their technology and bones was also sadly hidden and forgotten as the greatness of their history.
Guys, and there's a rare occasion that they found bones. If you saw my video a while back, the thumbnail, my guy is literally holding a finger, an index finger in his lap like this. So you got literally a index finger a little bit bigger than this. This is just as wide as I can go on my screen, but it was literally wider, and bro's holding it like a lap. And check this out. I found this one right here of this giant finger. Look at this video. Check this photo out. This is literally another picture of a giant finger I found. So there's remnants all over.
And all new discoveries of giants today and in the future will be ridiculed. And it says here that some even intermingled with beasts that don't even live here. The eternal known lands. The custodians made a pact that never the humans of the new reset could know that there was a force that had the possibilities to defeat the custodians. These invisible colonizers. Captain Butler and his men that had crossed the ice walls couldn't believe that this story was real. But how could they doubt the story if they were living in it? And now Butler wanted to know about the Great Dome. What does it mean, he asked innocently. Each circle is divided by several different domes, and that depends on what encompasses that circle. The dome is a kind of membrane that divides each system. And to understand this, you would need to understand what is known as the cellular theory. We can compare this dome to a cell and its plasma membrane. And this dome membrane is a wall invisible to our eyes. And all circles or worlds have a connection between them. Meaning between the inner and outer circles, there are passageways. And in this book, it says that the custodians and Annunaki are both in on this. These races are both adept in manipulating environments, as they have the technology to do so in any environment. The connections between inner and outer worlds are not easy to find, but there are several races that have managed to escape these enclosures. And there are also portals that connect these environments. In this book, The Navigator That Crosses the Ice Walls, they say that based on the information gathered from the custodians, there are 178 domed lands. Our Earth is just one of them. The only dome that the custodians and Annunaki both have never been able to penetrate is the dome of the Celestial Lands. And in the Celestial Lands, it's said to contain the great secrets to penetrate the Great Dome, the one that's on top of everything. And of this Great Dome, we have very little information. Then it goes on to say that the custodians and Annunaki have been putting all of their scientists into discovering a way to penetrate these celestial lands, without any results thus far. Later, after all of the studies, they came to the conclusions that in the celestial lands, there do not exist physical bodies. And this is why every time they try to penetrate, the people that they'd send in would vanish, or in other descriptions, explode, literally take fire. So physical bodies do not exist, but there is a conscious energy that they call the source, or the source of life. This theory goes that this energy began to perceive the danger of custodial and Anunnaki technology and acted accordingly to safeguard its environment. Then this conscious energy split, taking the body of the 5 masters who gave life to the human being, occupying lands around your home and or homelands. They first started with Asgard to the north, a remote place bounded by mountains, which are areas very difficult to discover. Then they developed and they took lands in Lemuria, Atlantis, and the center of their lands, which they called Hyperborea, which in turn was a direct connection to the outside world, with Asgard, which is their land of origin. And they did this by means of connecting portals. The navigator who crossed the ice walls. Navigator who crossed the ice walls, 178 lands beyond our known lands. This is the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. Chapter 11, The Giant Humans and the Great Tartarians. As I've said, this book has a different history than that in our known lands. In the previous episode, I told you about the celestial lands and how they are impenetrable. And the custodians and Annunaki both have been conducting experiments, pushing all different races of extraterrestrials and humans into the celestial lands, but without a result. Because as soon as the material body enters this territory, it evaporates or catches fire or explodes. They've tried it all with no success. William Morris finds out all of this information from Shiki, the surviving gladiator that was in combat against the custodians in the last reset. So let's briefly recap what these celestial lands are. The study of such lands came to the conclusion that within these celestial lands did not exist physical bodies, but a conscious energy that they called source and or the source of life. The theory goes that this energy began to perceive the danger of the custodial and Anunnaki, their technology, and acted accordingly to safeguard their environment. And this conscious energy split into 5 parts, taking the body of the 5 masters. And these 5 masters are the ones that gave birth to the human being. And these humans occupied the lands around our homes and homelands. First, they created Asgard to the north, a remote place bounded by mountains and very difficult to discover. Once they developed there, then they created the lands of Lemuria, Atlantis, and the center of their lands, which they called Hyperborea, which had a direct connection with the outside world of Asgard. And Asgard was the land of origins, and these places connected by portals. So Shiki continues to tell William Morris about this story. These men that were animated with the vital energy of source, they began to increase in numbers as well as technology. They first based their technology on race development and welfare, but later came to create defense weapons. But unfortunately, they never reached the custodial level. One night, the custodians were able to penetrate the known lands and found that there was abundant gold and other minerals. In their eagerness, they traveled through every point of these lands, arriving to discover the outside of the first dome. Yeah, there's not just one. And it was between a zone of high mountains, the famous lands of Asgard. And this is where they collided with the humans living there. This group of custodians was very surprised to find that these people had light weapons. When they attacked, they would immediately pulverize their enemies, and also igniting an alarm to warn the other lands that were inhabited by the other humans. Unfortunately, the energy that was sustaining these celestial lands and that animated the bodies of humans was not prepared to face the custodians. Furthermore, the custodians outnumbered the humans 1,000 to 1. This was the beginning of a long nightmare that lasted up until today. So why didn't they just...
This kind of reminds me of those Elohim wars that you saw in the beginning of this video, man. They said the custodians had them outnumbered. Man, drop in the comments what you guys think about this so far. Please drop your comments and chime in. You gotta keep your head on a swivel on this, man.
Just do what they did in other lands, where they looted the minerals and the resources they needed and just went on their merry way. Why were the lands with all of these humans so important for them? Well, it was because they wanted to try with humans to penetrate the celestial lands as they had done with other races. Because humans have a soul, we have part of source energy inside within us. Navigate across the...
That source energy, man, could that be the Holy Spirit? And it took special people that can penetrate and go inside it. I don't know. I'm just thinking of what it means. You know what I'm saying?
The navigator crossed the ice walls, 178 lands beyond our known lands. Let's get into detail about the celestial lands and our source energy, our soul. The custodians noticed that the energy that resided inside of the humans always went to the celestial lands, regardless of where they met the point of death. The soul would always go and enter the celestial lands, but no material body could do that. And this is why.
How can you make this up is what I'm trying to figure out. How can someone make this up? Honestly, this is like the greatest Star Wars Marvel movie. If you made a movie about this, do you know how hard it would go? This entire video for entertainment purposes only. This is just a fictional story. It's not real. But do you know how hard it would go if they made this?
Why the custodians and the Anunnaki have been studying humans since the beginning of time that they have discovered them. They came to the conclusion that the human was the fundamental vehicle to be able to penetrate the celestial lands. And this is their obsession with humans. But their plan had a flaw because it was missing a connector, meaning they needed a power, a way to be able to control and manipulate the source energy of the soul. And it was never possible for them to learn how to manipulate the energy, the source energy within us. At first, they performed the ancient colonizations of these lands, carried out by these beings in this general way. Most of the population was taken out and extinguished, leaving only the newborn babies. Then comes the necessary education for these babies. And with this education system, in this way, the custodians would give the colonized their desired function and structure. And when they were conducting past resets, they experimented with several sacrifices of humans. And they did this together to see if they were able to manipulate this energy, but that was all in vain. They tried with several forms of rituals that didn't work, and they even tried resurrecting bodies, and a lot of other different things. Then what happened next is not clear. They say that they continued to try to control this population here in the known lands to be able to continue to try to enter the celestial lands. And others say that they continued to do so only because they feared humans and their huge potential in being able to grow and overcome them and defeat them in the future. And because we carry the source inside of us, we are very important, and that's why they won't leave us alone. Because the source energy within us keeps alive all the other beings and all of the other circled environments. And this is when the giants from the outside that were only observing and never interfered decided to do so, because they figured that if the celestial lands fell, then so would all the other circled environments. To be continued.
Who's ready for more The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls? Chapter 12, Giant Humans versus the Custodians in the Known Lands. And the Custodians returned triumphantly from their war. They found their colony totally revolutionized. If you'd like to catch up, there is a playlist with all of the previous episodes. This is the story of Sir William Morris, the navigator who crossed the ice walls. His vessel, he investigated the Arctic Circle, finding an unknown passage to an open sea, where other lands awaited him behind the ice wall. So let's get back to the story. Now there was a power they did not expect between giants, giant humans, and angry humans, revealing themselves for the years of slavery. So this race of giants that for a while was totally forgotten by the Custodians was able to recover their technology and backwards engineered it to suit them in their defense systems of war. Giants were fighting this war so that humanity would realize that Earth had infinite worlds. And they also were trying to awaken the energies that lie dormant within the human bodies. You see, humans were numbed down and they forgot all about their past. The ancient giants knew about the source within each human being. And in this war, the humans and giants fought together against the Custodians and the Anunnaki. A lot of these battles took place here in the known lands. It was the boom of the years of the Great Tartary and their technology based on free energy. Custodians and the Anunnaki saw their pyramids fall, and this is when they could no longer fight against the resistance. Their control was escaping them like water through their fingers. So after this huge wars, The custodians wanted to do a reset right away, but they couldn't because their pyramids were not working. They were destroyed. That affected their power of manipulation on the environments. In chapter 12,
Damn, they said they had destroyed the pyramid so they couldn't pull off the resets. Oh no.
it's telling us that the pyramids have something to do with all of these controlled environments, and maybe the ice wall itself. At this point, another war starts here in the known lands, and this time humanity would fight alongside the giants against their former fierce colonizers. The battle itself could not be described, as it created so much fear in the surrounding lands that no one was able to witness it. They only saw the aftermath of bodies piling up after it had already occurred. Bodies from...
You gotta think, all these catacombs? Yo, that is crazy. Because if you look at the catacombs under Paris, all the catacombs all over, that's a lot of bodies. Where did these bodies come from?
From both sides were observed laying in the lands. Areas were once covered in vast vegetations, but now they are nothing more than sand and dead landscapes. The custodians' armies were kind of depleted because they had previously had a war with the Annunaki. You see, the custodians and Annunaki are not friends, but sometimes they become allies. So their army was weakened and could not afford to start a new war right now. The humans and giants were on the path of a great victory. Something happened in the middle of that time that changed the outcome. The custodians go to the Anunnaki lands and they wanted to reach an agreement, which they needed their alliance to be able to defeat this new human and giant army that they were fighting. Their forces could not win alone. So in exchange for a lot of gold, the Anunnaki joined them. The Anunnaki also joined them because they were afraid of retaliation from this new power of humans and giant alliance. They thought it was their best interest to join the custodians once again, that they had just fought in a war of their own to win this one. And get this, while the custodians were planning with the Anunnaki on how to defeat the humans and the giants, they left an inferior race in command to watch over their lands. Guess who they were? The Greys, from Zeta Reticuli and the lands of Orion. This is how the Greys started observing the Earth. They were our watchers. But according to the story, the Greys did not agree with the old treaty and the manipulation received. No one ever thought the humans would join the giants and now be this force to be reckoned with. Stay tuned for the next part. Who's ready for more The Navigator Who...
Sense. Footage seen from a Russian military plane. This is what the North Pole looks like. A huge vortex. Now, everyone knows that the North Pole is a magnetic pole. So how does this apply to flat Earth? If the North Pole is the center of the map, the center of the magnetic pole, where the aurora borealis is known to be seen. In fact, the colors of the aurora borealis are formed due to the electron field that changes the color of the hosts in the atmosphere. That's how strong the Earth's North Pole is. As in this small example. So, doesn't that vortex seen from planes look like a portal to you? The same shape as the aurora borealis. And the sun and moon fulfill the role of the magnetic ball in the prototype. Everything makes sense. As you can see, it's like a huge round magnet with a hole in the middle. The South Pole, that is, Antarctica, or rather the ice wall. Footage seen from a Russian military plane.
The North Pole is not what you may think.
To my video, land in the Arctic Circle, point north, and more powerful during the pandemic help.
Nigra as a lodestone mountain with such overwhelming force into it, so Nigra as a lodestone mountain with such overwhelming magnetic draw that it pulled the nails right out of explorers' boats. The 4 directional rivers connected to the central whirlpool emptying into it, surrounding this mountain, are described as the navel of the earth. Nigra as a lodestone mountain with such overwhelming
Nobody. Rupus nigra, or the Black Rock, is a magnetic black mountain in the center of the Earth, beginning of time by 4. Rupus nigra, or the Black Rock, is a magnetic black mountain in the center of the Earth that has been deliberately hidden for centuries. It is the tallest mountain ever known to man. According to Gerardus Mercator, it has roughly 64 kilometers in circumference, and its height is approximately 13 to 18 kilometers above sea level, and it might even higher if it measured from the bottom, which we never know for sure. How deep this mountain goes to the ground, maybe dozens or even hundreds of kilometers deep, we never know. It is so tall and also huge that can attract all compasses to the far south 4,000s of kilometers away. Compasses will not attract to a magnet. If the magnet is buried deep under the ground, it has to be a mountain to attract all compasses, and that is the Rupus nigra. As far as we know from mainstream narratives, the magnetic field in the North Pole is somehow buried deep inside the Earth. This is totally absurd, because a magnet will lose its electrical power if it's exposed to heat, like in the Earth's core. So, what does the Rupus nigra has to do with tides? This magnetic mountain is surrounded by 4 continents, where there are 4 streams of rivers flow from the center. That flows of water goes outward during high tides, and goes inward during low tides. And it's always been like that since the beginning of time. And what's causing the water goes inward and outward? There is a magnetic vortex that's caused by the circling motion of the sun, the moon and other celestial bodies in the heaven, powered by the ether, and performs such harmony in our realm. For your information, the modern science doesn't know in what depths the magnetic field is, because they never include it in their imaginary layers of Earth. Can you believe it? For centuries, they really don't know where's the Earth magnetic field came from, or where's the exact location of it. Rupus nigra, or the Black Rock.
They got me curious now.
Don't scroll past this. In the midst of the 4 countries is a whirlpool, into which there empty these 4 enduring seas, which divide the north, and the water rushes round and descends into the earth, just as if one were pouring it through a filter funnel. It is 4 degrees wide on every side of the pole, that is to say 8 degrees altogether, except that right under the pole there lies a bare rock in the midst of the sea. Its circumference is almost 33 French miles, and it is all of magnetic stone, and is as high as the clouds. So priest Jacobus Coyen said, who had received the astrolabe from this Minorite in exchange for a testament. And the Minorite himself had heard that one can see all round it from the sea, and that it is black and glistening. Like and subscribe for more content like this.
Then tell me, why is it almost all of these random blocks of snow have placed? Then tell me, why is it almost all of these random blocks of snow have places to walk in? There's a hole here on this one, and I can show you dozens more. Here as well. Almost every single one has something that looks like a door on the side of it. Some way in, some way out. And very strange things around it as well. Things that almost look like different types of craft.
Here's another one. Why would snowdrifts just randomly create openings into them that a man could walk through? Here's another one. Here's another one. And you go through each one of these blocks, and literally every single one of them has a door. Now, I've seen snow and ice act in very strange ways in very cold weather. And yeah, can it make these kind of, I don't know what the word you would use for, kind of jagged structures? It sure can. But with paths and doors and walkways on literally every single one of them? See, this is the more mundane, not so exciting evidence of life. I mean, there's very few here that I can't show a doorway into, some way to navigate in and out of. And as you pan out, it starts to make sense. I can show you 6 just in this picture.
It looks like a damn colony when he zoomed out.
One here, one here, one here, one here, one here, another one here, maybe more. This looks like straight up a neighborhood, just covered nice in snow. You know, that they don't make themselves part of our society, well, can't really blame them.
And that's as far as the story goes. Chapter 12. I literally ordered the book. It should be here in a few days. And like I said, we're going to do a live stream and we're going to cover the entire thing together live. That will be a live video. I just wanted to hit this again, the outer ice walls, the wars that was going on, and try to figure out some type of new information. We found out the dragons can't be on this land because of the 5G waves popping off, and they were getting hunted down, and there's more space out there. That makes sense. We see these giant cave systems where people are crawling through esophaguses. So it's like there's some type of correlation here, man. These giant bodies, these cave systems, damn near every cave system you go through, I'm convinced is a petrified giant. Shout out to Roger on Mud Fossils. Shout out to Christina Bruno for this information, and shout out to Charlie for the ice wall information. Shout out to Charlie Griffin with a Y for the information on the ice walls. That's all I got for today's video. The next time I cover this, it will be a live. When I have the book, we'll be able to go through it together, the entire book. I'm gonna try to. If it takes longer than a couple hours, then we'll have to do it in sessions, but we're gonna go after it, and we're gonna write down, we're gonna talk about the custodians, the Zeta Grays coming from Orion, the Annunaki. We're also gonna look into other books, E.W. Barrington, Eye of the Republic. Sounds like he went out there and he has a story he has to tell. This isn't over with. It's a lot of information that we have to process and get through. They leaving us breadcrumbs from the truth, but it's up to us to eat the meat, spit out the bones, and use our own discernment. It's your boy JetskiChucK. God bless. Peace out.